The scissors clattered against the salon floor like a gunshot in a cathedral. In that crystalline moment of absolute silence, 7-year-old Lily Harper sat motionless in the leather chair, her small hands gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Behind her, the stylist, a woman who'd seen 20 years of tangles, dye disasters, and bad cuts, stood frozen, one hand still hovering near the child's scalp, her face drained of all color. And in the corner of the boutique salon, billionaire tech mogul Victor Hale felt his knees buckle as the carefully constructed walls of his grief-stricken existence crumbled around him. What lay hidden beneath his daughter's matted hair wasn't just evidence of neglect. It was a testament to silent suffering that had been happening for over a year, right under his nose, in a mansion worth $40 million. Before we continue with this story that will break your heart and put it back together, I invite you to stay with me until the very end. And please, take a moment to like this video and comment with the city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels, how many people it touches, and how we're all connected by the stories that remind us what truly matters. The morning had started like any other Saturday in the Hale mansion, which was to say, it had started with silence. Lily Harper Hale woke in her bedroom on the 3rd floor, in a space that resembled a museum exhibit more than a child's sanctuary. Everything was white. White furniture, white curtains, white bedding that felt expensive and cold against her skin. The room had been designed by an interior decorator her mother had hired 3 years ago, back when laughter still echoed through these halls, back when the house felt like a home instead of a mausoleum. She sat up slowly, careful not to disturb the massive knot of hair that had formed at the back of her head. The tangled mass had grown over the past year, week by week, tightening itself into something that felt alive, a creature that lived on her scalp and whispered pain whenever she moved too quickly. Lily had learned to sleep on her side, to turn her head with caution, to never, ever try to brush it herself. The last time she'd attempted that 6 months ago, she'd spent an hour crying silently into her pillow, convinced that if she made too much noise, Mrs. Whitmore would come to scold her for being dramatic. Mrs. Whitmore. The very thought of the woman made Lily's stomach clench. Constance Whitmore had been hired 14 months ago, 2 weeks after the funeral, when Victor Hale had finally accepted that he couldn't raise his daughter alone while running a company valued at $12 billion. The agency had presented her with glowing references, 20 years of experience, impeccable credentials, fluent in 3 languages. What they hadn't mentioned, what couldn't be captured in a resume, was the coldness in her eyes, the way her smile never quite reached them, the tone she used when no one else was listening. "Good morning, Lily." Mrs. Whitmore's voice cut through the silence as she opened the bedroom door without knocking. She never knocked. "Your father has requested you join him for breakfast before his 9 o'clock conference call." Lily turned carefully, her hair pulling at her scalp with the movement. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Whitmore's eyes, pale gray, like stones at the bottom of a winter lake, swept over Lily with the same expression she might use when inspecting furniture for dust. "And do something about your appearance. You look like you've been raised by wolves." The door closed with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam. Lily stood and walked to her private bathroom, avoiding the mirror as much as possible. When she finally looked, she barely recognized herself. Her face, once round with childhood, once quick to smile, had grown thin and solemn. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hair, which her mother used to brush every night with long, loving strokes, telling stories with each pass of the comb, had become something monstrous. The front pieces still hung loose and relatively smooth, creating an illusion of normalcy if you didn't look too close. But gathered at the back of her head was a mass roughly the size of a softball, a knot so tight and complex it had become impenetrable. She could still remember when it started. 3 months after her mother died, when grief had swallowed her father whole and Mrs. Whitmore had taken control of the household, Lily had woken up one morning with a small tangle. She'd gone to Mrs. Whitmore for help, the way she would have gone to her mother. "I don't have time for this nonsense," Mrs. Whitmore had said, barely glancing up from her tablet where she was organizing the staff schedule. "You're 7 years old, not a baby. Figure it out yourself." But Lily hadn't known how to figure it out. Each day the tangle grew. Each night she went to bed hoping that somehow, magically, it would be gone in the morning. And each morning she woke to find it larger, tighter, more impossible. She'd tried to tell her father once, about 4 months ago. It had been one of their rare dinners together, Victor clearing space in his schedule, making an effort, though his eyes had that distant look they always carried now, as if he was seeing through her to some point in the past where her mother still existed. "Daddy, my hair—" "Not now, sweetheart. I'm sorry, I've got the Tokyo office calling in 15 minutes. We'll talk later, okay?" Later never came. It never did. Lily pulled on a dress, pale blue, one of the dozens in her closet that Mrs. Whitmore selected for her, and made her way downstairs to the dining room. The mansion was a testament to wealth without warmth. Soaring ceilings, marble floors, art on the walls that cost more than most people's houses. Her footsteps echoed as she walked, a lonely sound that reminded her every day how big this place was, how small she felt inside it. Victor was already seated at the head of the table, his laptop open beside his plate, his phone in his hand, his attention split between 3 different screens. At 42, he was still handsome in that sharp, angular way that photographs loved, but grief had carved new lines around his mouth and eyes. His dark hair, shot through with premature gray, was already disheveled though it was barely 8 in the morning. He'd been working since 5, Lily knew. He was always working. "Good morning, Princess," he said, the nickname automatic, not quite reaching the distracted expression on his face. "How did you sleep?" "Fine, thank you." Lily slid into her chair, 6 seats down from him at the long table. Mrs. Whitmore insisted on maintaining proper dining etiquette, even when it was just the 2 of them in a room designed for 20. "Good, good." Victor was already looking back at his screen. "I've got that conference call, but I wanted to see you before—" His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face tightened. "I'm sorry, I have to take this. Jenkins, could you—" The butler materialized from the corner. "Of course, sir." Victor stood, phone already to his ear, walking toward his study without looking back. "This is Hale. No, I specifically said the acquisition needed to be finalized before—" His voice faded as he disappeared down the hallway. Lily sat alone at the massive table, surrounded by empty chairs, and ate her breakfast in silence. It was a routine she knew by heart. Wake up alone, eat alone, spend the day alone except for Mrs. Whitmore's cold supervision, go to bed alone. Her father was present in the house the way a ghost might be. You knew he was there, you caught glimpses of him, but you could never quite reach him. After breakfast, Mrs. Whitmore appeared with her usual efficiency. "Your tutor will arrive in an hour. You'll complete your mathematics and reading assignments in the library. After lunch, you have piano practice. This evening, your father has a business dinner, so you'll eat in your room." "Yes, ma'am." "And Lily?" Mrs. Whitmore's voice took on that edge it always had when they were alone. "Try not to be so mopey. Your father has enough to deal with without you adding to his stress." Something small and sharp twisted in Lily's chest, but she kept her face blank. She'd learned that showing emotion only made things worse. "Yes, ma'am." The day progressed with the mechanical precision of all her days. Her tutor, Mr. Fielding, came and went, too focused on curriculum to notice anything beyond whether she could solve quadratic equations. Her piano teacher, Ms. Chen, rapped her knuckles with a ruler when she hit a wrong note and told her to focus. Lunch was served on fine china by staff who smiled politely but never met her eyes for more than a moment. The only person who seemed to actually see her was Elena Ruiz, the new housekeeper who'd been hired just 3 weeks ago. Elena found Lily that afternoon in the library, curled in a window seat with a book she wasn't really reading. The housekeeper was in her mid-30s, with warm brown eyes and dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. Unlike the other staff, who maintained careful professional distance, Elena had a way of actually looking at Lily, of treating her like a person rather than a piece of valuable furniture. "Reading anything good?" Elena asked, her voice carrying a slight accent that reminded Lily of warmth and spices, and things she couldn't quite name. Lily shrugged. "It's okay." Elena moved closer, ostensibly to dust the shelves nearby, but Lily could feel her attention. After a moment, the housekeeper spoke again, her voice careful. "Lily, I hope this isn't too forward, but how long has your hair been like that?" Lily's hand went automatically to the back of her head, to the mass she tried so hard to hide. "I don't know. A while." "Does it hurt?" The question was so unexpected, so direct, that tears sprang to Lily's eyes before she could stop them. No one had asked her that. Not once in over a year. Not Mrs. Whitmore, not her tutors, not the staff, not her father. No one had asked if she was hurting. "Sometimes," she whispered. Elena set down her duster and moved to sit beside her, slowly, giving Lily space to pull away if she wanted. When Lily didn't move, Elena continued in a soft voice. "I used to be a hairdresser before I came to work here. I had my own salon for almost 10 years. Would you let me look at it, just to see if I can help?" Every instinct told Lily to refuse. Mrs. Whitmore had made it clear that her hair was her own problem, her own failure. Asking for help would only prove how incapable she was, how much trouble she caused. But there was something in Elena's eyes, something kind and patient and safe, that made Lily nod. "Okay," she breathed. Elena's hands were gentle as she carefully examined the massive tangle. Lily felt her go still, heard the sharp intake of breath. When Elena spoke again, her voice was tight with emotion she was clearly trying to control. "Lily, sweetheart, when was the last time someone helped you brush your hair?" "My mom used to, before she—" Lily couldn't finish the sentence. "And after?" "Mrs. Whitmore said I was old enough to do it myself." Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, harder, angry in a way that somehow wasn't directed at Lily. "Honey, this isn't something you should have to handle alone. This isn't your fault. Do you understand? None of this is your fault." Lily didn't understand. How could it not be her fault? If she wasn't so much trouble, if she was better, stronger, more capable, then maybe her father would pay attention. Maybe Mrs. Whitmore would be kinder. Maybe everything wouldn't be so hard. But she didn't say any of that. She just nodded. "I'm going to talk to your father," Elena said firmly. "He needs to know about this." Panic flared in Lily's chest. "No, please, don't. He's so busy, and Mrs. Whitmore said I shouldn't bother him with little things." "Lily," Elena took her small hands in her own warm ones. "This is not a little thing, and you are not a bother. Your father loves you. I'm certain of it. He needs to know what's happening." But Elena didn't know how it really was. She didn't know that Victor Hale had built walls around his grief so high that nothing could scale them, not even his daughter's pain. She didn't know that Mrs. Whitmore had made it clear that Lily's needs were inconveniences to be managed, not problems to be solved. Still, there was something in Elena's determination that made Lily hope, just a little, in a way that hurt worse than not hoping at all. That evening, Elena did try to speak with Victor. Lily knew because she heard Mrs. Whitmore's sharp voice cutting through the hallway outside her room. "Absolutely not. Mr. Hale is preparing for the board meeting tomorrow. He doesn't have time for the staff to bother him with minor household matters. If you have concerns about your duties, you may direct them to me." "With all due respect, Mrs. Whitmore, this isn't about my duties. It's about Lily. Miss Lily is my responsibility. The domestic staff handles cleaning and meal preparation. The care of Mr. Hale's daughter falls under my purview, and I don't appreciate you overstepping your position." There was a pause, then Elena's voice, quieter but no less firm. "I understand hierarchy, Mrs. Whitmore, but what I saw today—" "What you saw today was a child who needs to learn self-sufficiency. Now, if you wish to continue your employment in this house, I suggest you remember your place." Lily heard Elena's footsteps retreating, heard her own door click shut as she dove back into bed, pretending to be asleep. She felt the last little flame of hope sputter out in her chest. Even Elena, who'd been kind, who'd seemed to care, had been stopped by Mrs. Whitmore. Nothing would change. Nothing could change. She was wrong. The change came 2 days later, on that Saturday morning, in a way no one could have predicted. "We're going to the salon," Victor announced at breakfast, startling Lily so thoroughly she almost dropped her fork. He was standing at the head of the table, laptop closed for once, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "The salon?" she repeated. "For your hair. Mrs. Whitmore mentioned it was getting long, and I realized I haven't taken you for a haircut since—" He trailed off, but they both knew what he meant. "Since your mother died. Since everything fell apart. Anyway, I cleared my morning. We'll go to that place on Brentwood, the one your mother used to take you to. Lily's heart began to pound. The salon meant strangers touching her hair, meant revealing the tangle, meant embarrassment and shame, and everyone knowing she'd failed at something as simple as taking care of herself. I don't need... It's decided. Victor's voice was gentle but final. Go get your coat. We'll leave in 10 minutes. Mrs. Whitmore appeared in the doorway, her expression tight. Mr. Hale, if I may, I'm not certain this is the best use of your time. I could easily take Lily. I'm taking my daughter to get her hair done. Victor's tone shifted, taking on the edge it held in boardrooms when someone questioned his authority. Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Whitmore, but I can handle this. The woman's jaw tightened, but she nodded and disappeared. 20 minutes later, Lily sat in the back of her father's Mercedes, watching the city slide past the tinted windows. Victor drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other drumming absently on his thigh. Lily could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, as if she were a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Lily, he said finally, his voice careful, is everything... Are you happy? The question was so unexpected that Lily couldn't formulate an answer. Happy? She didn't even remember what happiness felt like. It was like asking someone who'd been living in darkness if they remembered the sun. I'm fine, Daddy. He frowned at her non-answer but didn't push. They drove the rest of the way in silence. The salon was exactly as Lily remembered, sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick walls, and the sharp chemical scent of hair products mixing with expensive perfume. Her mother used to bring her here once a month, making it an adventure. They'd get their hair done together, then go for ice cream, talking and laughing like they were best friends instead of mother and daughter. The memory was a knife in Lily's chest. Mr. Hale! The receptionist's face lit up with recognition. We haven't seen you in... Oh! Her expression shifted as she saw Lily, saw the way the girl held herself, the dark circles under her eyes. Would you like Jessica? She's available right now. That would be perfect, thank you. Jessica emerged from the back. A woman in her 40s with artistic black-rimmed glasses and purple streaks in her blonde hair. Lily remembered her, remembered how she used to make balloon animals with hair ties while Lily's mother got highlights. Oh my goodness, Lily! Jessica's smile was warm and genuine. Look how much you've grown. Come on back, sweetheart. Lily followed on wooden legs, her father trailing behind. She could feel the weight of the tangle at the back of her head, could feel the way it pulled at her scalp with each step. When Jessica gestured to the chair, Lily climbed up slowly, her hands shaking. So, what are we thinking today? Jessica asked, running her hands lightly over Lily's hair, the front pieces, the smooth parts. A trim? Maybe some layers to... Her hands reached the back of Lily's head. Everything stopped. Jessica's hands froze. Her face went pale. She looked up, catching Lily's eyes in the mirror, and Lily saw something there that made her want to disappear. Horror, yes, but also sadness, a kind of heartbreak that adults weren't supposed to show children. Lily, Jessica said carefully, how long has this been here? Lily couldn't answer. Her throat had closed up. Lily? Victor stepped forward, finally paying attention, finally seeing his daughter instead of just looking at her. What's wrong? Jessica's hands were still frozen at the back of Lily's head. Slowly, very slowly, she lifted the smooth front sections of hair away, revealing what had been hidden underneath. The tangle was massive, bigger than Victor had imagined, bigger than Jessica had seen in 20 years of professional hairdressing. It was a solid mass, matted so tightly it had formed a kind of shell against Lily's scalp. But that wasn't what made Jessica gasp. That wasn't what made Victor's face drain of all color. It was what lay beneath. As Jessica carefully, gently began to examine the tangle, her fingers probing the edges with professional delicacy, she found it. The scalp underneath wasn't just irritated or red. Where the hair had pulled tight and stayed tight for months, the skin had broken open in places. There were wounds, small at first, but spreading. In the dim light of the salon, Jessica could see the telltale signs of infection, inflammation, crusting, the distinctive evidence of bacteria that had been allowed to fester. And moving through it all, barely visible but unmistakably there, were lice. Not a few, dozens. They'd made a home in the tangled mass, protected from discovery by the very matting that had allowed them to thrive. The infestation was severe, the kind that develops when a child has been left untreated for months, when basic hygiene has been impossible, when no one has been looking close enough to notice. "Oh my God," Jessica breathed. Victor moved forward, his hand reaching out. "What? What is it?" Jessica looked at him, and in her eyes was an accusation she didn't need to voice. "How could you not know? How could you let this happen? How could a child live in a $40 million mansion and suffer like this?" "Mr. Hale," she said carefully, "I think we need to call a doctor. This is beyond what I can handle with scissors and conditioner. This needs medical attention." That's when Victor saw it, really saw it. As Jessica lifted more of the hair away, he saw the mass of matted tangles, saw the raw patches of scalp where the skin had broken down, saw the infection that had been growing in the darkness, saw the tiny moving specks that made his stomach turn. And he saw his daughter's face in the mirror, her eyes huge and terrified, tears streaming down her cheeks, her whole body trembling. "Lily," he whispered, and his voice broke on her name. "Lily, how long has this been happening?" "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Daddy. I tried to brush it myself, but I couldn't, and Mrs. Whitmore said I was old enough to figure it out, and I didn't want to bother you because you were so sad and so busy, and I thought maybe if I just waited it would get better, but it kept getting worse, and it hurts, Daddy. It hurts all the time." Victor's knees buckled. He'd faced corporate crises, market crashes, boardroom coups. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals while running on 3 hours of sleep. He'd buried his wife and somehow kept breathing when every instinct told him to stop. But nothing had prepared him for this moment, for the realization that while he'd been drowning in his own grief, his daughter had been drowning right beside him, and he'd been too blind to see. The scissors hit the floor with a clatter that echoed through the suddenly silent salon. Other stylists had stopped working, were staring. Other clients had turned to look. The receptionist had her hand over her mouth. And Victor Hale, tech billionaire, self-made success story, man who'd built an empire from nothing, knelt on the floor of a hair salon and felt his entire world crack open. "Lily," he said, his voice raw, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Jessica was already on her phone calling someone, speaking in low, urgent tones. Victor heard phrases like possible infection, severe infestation, Child Protective Services might need to be contacted. Each word was a hammer blow. He reached for his daughter, and Lily, sweet, patient, suffering Lily, flinched. She flinched from him. That small movement, that instinctive pull away, broke something in Victor that all the grief of the past year hadn't managed to touch. This was his daughter, his baby girl. The child he'd made with the woman he loved. The child they'd welcomed with tears of joy and promises of protection. The child he'd sworn would always be safe, always be loved, always be his priority. And he'd failed her so completely that she flinched when he reached for her. "We're going to fix this," he said, his voice shaking but determined. "Lily, look at me. We're going to fix this. All of it. I promise you. I promise." Jessica was back, crouching beside them. "Mr. Hale, I've called Dr. Morrison. She's a pediatrician who specializes in cases like this. She can see Lily immediately. Her office is just 10 minutes from here." "Cases like this?" Victor's voice was hollow. "How often does this happen?" Jessica's expression was careful. "More often than you'd think, unfortunately. Usually in situations where a child's care has been neglected." The word hung in the air like an indictment. Neglected. His daughter had been neglected. In his house, under his roof, while he'd been too consumed with his own pain to notice hers. "Let's go," he said, standing, scooping Lily up in his arms, even though she was really too big to be carried like a small child. She was 7 years old, all knobby knees and sharp elbows, but she felt impossibly light, impossibly fragile. "We're going to the doctor, right now." "Daddy, I'm sorry," Lily sobbed into his shoulder. "I'm sorry, I'm so much trouble." "No." Victor held her tighter, his own tears finally breaking free. "No, baby. You're not trouble. You're my daughter, and I love you, and this is not your fault. Do you hear me? None of this is your fault." As he carried her out of the salon, past the staring faces and whispered conversations, past the perfect hair and the perfect lives, Victor's mind was already racing. Mrs. Whitmore, the woman he'd trusted with his daughter's care, the woman who'd stood in his home for 14 months and let a child suffer. She'd told him everything was fine. She'd assured him Lily was adjusting, thriving even. She'd presented reports of completed lessons, attended activities, maintained schedules, and all the while, hidden beneath her cold efficiency, had been this: a child slowly breaking apart, crying silent tears, carrying pain that no one acknowledged. The rage that swept through Victor was white-hot and clarifying. For the first time since his wife's death, he felt something other than numbness. For the first time in 14 months, he felt absolutely, crystalline clear about what he needed to do. Dr. Morrison's office was in a modern medical building with warm lighting and abstract art on the walls meant to soothe anxious children. The doctor herself was in her 50s, with kind eyes and gentle hands that Lily immediately trusted in a way she hadn't trusted an adult in over a year. "All right, sweetheart," Dr. Morrison said after Victor had explained, haltingly, his voice breaking more than once, what they'd discovered. "I'm going to take a look, okay? And I promise, I'll be as gentle as possible." The examination was thorough and devastating. Dr. Morrison documented everything with calm professionalism, but Victor could see the tightness around her mouth, the way her jaw clenched when she discovered just how severe the infections were, how long the infestation had gone untreated. "Mr. Hale," she said finally, pulling off her gloves and turning to face him with an expression that was carefully neutral. "I'm required by law to file a report with Child Protective Services when I see signs of potential neglect." Victor felt the bottom drop out of his stomach. "I didn't know, I swear, I didn't know it was this bad. I've been working too much, and I trusted the caretaker to—" "I understand that these situations are often more complex than they appear," Dr. Morrison interrupted gently, "and I can see that you're taking immediate action now that you're aware. That matters. But Lily's condition is severe enough that it requires immediate intervention. The infections need aggressive treatment. The infestation needs to be completely eradicated, and Lily herself needs monitoring, both physical and psychological." "Whatever it takes," Victor said immediately. "Whatever she needs. I don't care about the cost, or it's not about cost, Mr. Hale." The doctor's voice was kind but firm. "It's about attention. Lily needs someone who will notice when something is wrong. She needs someone who will listen when she tries to tell them she's hurting. She needs someone who will prioritize her well-being above their own convenience." Each word was true, and each one hit Victor like a physical blow. "I know," he whispered. "I know I failed her, but I'm here now. I'm listening now." Dr. Morrison studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I believe you, and I think Lily believes you too. But Mr. Hale, this didn't happen overnight. This level of neglect develops over months of ignored needs. When we're finished here, when Lily's physical wounds are treated, you need to address what allowed this to happen in the first place." "I will," Victor promised, "starting with firing the woman I trusted to care for her." "That's a start," Dr. Morrison agreed. "But it goes deeper than one employee. You need to ask yourself, how did your grief become more important than your daughter's pain? How did a child learn to stay silent about her suffering because she thought she'd be a burden? Those are harder questions, Mr. Hale, and answering them will require more than money or power or good intentions." She was right. Victor knew she was right, and for the first time since his wife's death, he felt ready, no, desperate, to do the work. Dr. Morrison prescribed antibiotics for the infections, a specialized treatment for the lice infestation, and pain medication for the immediate discomfort. She gave detailed instructions for cleaning Lily's room, washing all her bedding and clothes in hot water, vacuuming thoroughly. She scheduled follow-up appointments and gave Victor a referral for a child psychologist who specialized in trauma and grief. "The physical healing will take a few weeks," she explained as she walked them out. "The emotional healing will take longer. Be patient. Be present. And Mr. Hale, don't try to do this alone. Your daughter needs you, but she also needs a support system. Build one." As they drove home, Lily, drowsy from the pain medication, leaning against Victor's shoulder in the back seat, While his driver navigated the afternoon traffic, Victor made a series of phone calls. The first was to his assistant. "Clear my schedule, everything, for the next month." "Sir, you have the board meeting tomorrow, and the Tokyo office needs—" "I said everything. Reschedule the board meeting. Tell Tokyo I'll be available remotely for emergencies only. Everything else goes to Sarah." Sarah was his COO, brilliant and capable. She could handle the company. His daughter needed him more. The second call was to his lawyer. "I need you to draft termination papers for Constance Whitmore, effective immediately. I want her out of my house tonight, and I want to make damn sure she never works with children again." The third call was to the staffing agency. "I need a new household manager, and I need you to vet them thoroughly. I want references, background checks, interviews with previous families. I don't care how long it takes. I'm not rushing this again." And the fourth call was to someone he'd been avoiding for months, his therapist, the one he'd stopped seeing after 3 sessions because it was too painful, too raw, too much. "Dr. Chen, this is Victor Hale. I know I stopped coming, and I know that was wrong. I need to schedule an appointment, and I need a referral for someone who works with children. My daughter, she needs help. We both do." When they arrived home, Mrs. Whitmore was waiting in the foyer with her usual composed expression. It shattered the moment she saw Victor's face. "Mr. Hale, if I may—" "No." Victor's voice was ice. "You may not. My lawyer is sending termination papers. You have 2 hours to pack your belongings and vacate the premises." Her face flushed. "This is outrageous. I've done nothing but provide exemplary service to this household. If this is about the girl's hair, I assure you I repeatedly instructed her to handle it herself. I know. I heard." Victor took a step forward, and Mrs. Whitmore actually backed up, something like fear flickering across her face. "She's 7 years old, 7, and you told her to figure it out alone. You told her she was being dramatic. You told her not to bother me with little things. And all the while she was suffering, in pain, infected, infested, in my house, under your care. I ran this household efficiently. The child was fed, clothed, educated. The child has a name," Victor said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Her name is Lily, and she is not a task to be managed. She's a person who needed help and was told she didn't deserve it." Mrs. Whitmore's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Lily, who was half hidden behind her father, and for a moment something flickered in her expression. Was it shame, regret? But it was gone too quickly to tell. "I'll be gone within the hour," she said stiffly. 2 hours, Victor corrected. "And Mrs. Whitmore? My lawyer will be conducting a thorough review of your employment here. If I find out you've treated any other child the way you treated mine, I will make it my personal mission to ensure every family in this city knows exactly what kind of care you provide." The woman paled, but she simply nodded and disappeared up the stairs. Victor turned to find Elena standing in the doorway to the kitchen, her eyes shining with tears. "Elena," he said, "did you know about Lily's hair?" "I only discovered it a few days ago, Mr. Hale. I tried to talk to you, but Mrs. Whitmore—" "I know. I heard about that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you weren't able to reach me, and I'm grateful you tried." He paused, then continued. "I'm going to need help. Real help. Not someone who sees Lily as an obligation, but someone who will actually care about her well-being. Would you consider taking over as household manager? At least temporarily, while I find the right person?" Elena's eyes widened. "Mr. Hale, I'm honored, but I don't have experience as a household manager. I'm a housekeeper, and before that I was a hairdresser. I know. Lily told me." "Elena, I don't need someone with perfect credentials. I need someone who will notice when something is wrong, someone who will speak up even when it's difficult, someone who will treat my daughter like she matters. Can you do that?" Elena looked at Lily, who was watching her with desperate hope in her eyes, and smiled. "Yes, Mr. Hale, I can do that." "Then we'll discuss salary and responsibilities tomorrow. For now, could you help Lily get settled? Dr. Morrison gave instructions for treating her room. Everything needs to be washed, and we need to follow a specific protocol." "Of course." That night, after Mrs. Whitmore had departed in a taxi with her suitcases and her fury, After Lily's room had been stripped and cleaned and made safe again, after Elena had helped Lily through the first of the treatments that would gradually, carefully remove the massive tangle without causing more damage, Victor sat in his daughter's room and read her a story. It was something he hadn't done since before his wife died. The book was one of Lily's favorites, about a princess who saved herself without waiting for anyone to rescue her. Lily was curled against his side, her head resting on his chest, and Victor could feel how tense she was, how uncertain, as if she was waiting for him to remember something more important and leave. But he didn't leave. He finished the story, then started another one. And when that one was done, when Lily's eyes were drooping and her breathing had slowed, he didn't get up. He just held her, this precious child he'd almost lost, not to death, but to his own grief-blind negligence, and made a promise. "Lily," he whispered, "I know I can't take back the past year. I know I can't erase the pain or the loneliness or the fear. But I can promise you this. I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere, and I will never, ever let anyone make you feel like you don't matter again." Lily stirred, her eyes opening slightly. "Even when you're sad about Mom?" The question pierced his heart. "Even then. Especially then. Because your mom loved you more than anything in this world, and if she could see me now, she'd be furious that I let my grief hurt you. She'd want me to be better, for you." "I miss her," Lily whispered. "I miss her too, sweetheart, every single day. And you know what? It's okay to miss her. It's okay to be sad. But we can be sad together now. We can help each other. That's what families do." Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice so small he almost didn't hear it, she said, "Daddy, can you brush my hair? Like Mom used to?" Victor felt his vision blur with tears. "Once it's better, once Dr. Morrison says it's safe, I will brush your hair every single night. That's a promise. And I keep my promises to you, okay?" "Okay." She fell asleep like that, curled against him, safe for the first time in over a year. And Victor stayed, watching her breathe, memorizing the peaceful expression on her face, and planning exactly how he was going to make sure she never, ever felt abandoned again. The road ahead would be long. He knew that. There would be more doctor's appointments, more treatments, more difficult conversations. There would be the CPS investigation that Dr. Morrison was required to report, questions he'd have to answer about how this had happened, scrutiny of his fitness as a parent. There would be therapy, for both of them, digging into wounds that had festered in the dark. But for the first time since his wife's death, Victor Hale felt something other than crushing grief. He felt purpose. He felt determination. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he could find his way back to being the father his daughter needed him to be. And in the morning, when Lily woke to find him still there, still holding her, she would smile. A small, tentative thing, but real. And that smile would be worth more than all the billions in his accounts, more than all the success his company had achieved, more than anything else in the world. Because in the end, none of it mattered if he lost his daughter. And he'd come so close to losing her, not to death or disease or accident, but to his own failure to see, to hear, to be present. Never again. That was his vow. Never again. The first rays of morning light filtered through Lily's curtains, painting soft gold across walls that had been scrubbed clean the night before. She woke slowly, confused at first by the weight across her shoulders, until she remembered her father was still there. He'd stayed all night, exactly as he'd promised, his arm around her even in sleep, his breathing steady and sure. Lily lay very still, afraid that if she moved, the spell would break. This moment felt fragile, precious, like something that might shatter if she breathed too hard. For so long she'd been invisible in this house, a ghost moving through rooms where no one really saw her. But now her father's presence felt solid and real in a way nothing had for months. Victor stirred, his eyes opening, and when he looked at her, his expression held none of the distant preoccupation she'd grown accustomed to. Instead, he smiled, really smiled, the kind that reached his eyes and transformed his whole face. "Good morning, Princess," he said, and this time the nickname felt genuine, not automatic. "How are you feeling?" Lily touched the back of her head carefully, where Elena had applied the first round of treatment the night before. The massive tangle was still there, But the medication had eased some of the constant ache that had become background noise to her existence. "Better?" she whispered, still half convinced this new reality might evaporate. "It doesn't hurt as much." "Good. That's good." Victor sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Elena's going to help with the next treatment after breakfast. Dr. Morrison said it'll take several sessions to work through everything safely, but we're going to get there. I promise." There was that word again, promise. Lily wanted desperately to believe it, but trust was a fragile thing, easily broken and hard to rebuild. She'd learned to protect herself by expecting nothing, by hoping for nothing, by accepting that she was fundamentally alone in this enormous house. Letting those walls down felt dangerous. "Daddy?" she ventured, her voice small. "What if you have to go back to work? What if there's an emergency?" Victor's face tightened, and Lily immediately regretted asking. She'd done it again, been a burden, created problems, asked for too much. But then he reached out and took her hand, his grip warm and steady. "Lily, look at me." He waited until her eyes met his. "Nothing, and I mean nothing, is more important than you. Not work, not meetings, not emergencies. The company will survive without me for a while. You're my priority now. The only priority that matters." But Mrs. Whitmore said, "Mrs. Whitmore was wrong." Victor's voice hardened at the woman's name. "About everything. She was wrong to make you feel like you didn't matter. She was wrong to ignore your pain. And she was wrong to tell you that asking for help was a burden. You are my daughter, helping you, caring for you, being here for you. That's not a burden. It's a privilege." Lily felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been locked tight for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them, and suddenly she was sobbing, great gasping sobs that shook her whole body. All the fear and pain and loneliness of the past year came pouring out in waves she couldn't control. Victor pulled her close, holding her tight while she cried, murmuring reassurances into her hair. "I've got you. I'm here. Let it out, sweetheart. It's okay. You're safe now. I've got you." When the storm finally passed, Lily felt hollowed out but lighter somehow, as if she'd been carrying a weight she hadn't known was there until it lifted. Victor produced a tissue from somewhere and gently wiped her face. "Better?" he asked softly. Lily nodded, exhausted but oddly peaceful. "Come on," Victor said, standing and holding out his hand. "Let's get some breakfast. Elena's making pancakes, and I have it on good authority that they're the best in the city." They went downstairs together, Victor's hand warm around hers, and for the first time in over a year, the mansion didn't feel quite so cavernous and cold. Elena was indeed in the kitchen, moving around the space with comfortable efficiency, and the smell of vanilla and cinnamon filled the air. "Good morning!" Elena's smile was genuine and warm. "I hope you're both hungry. I may have gotten a little carried away." The kitchen island was laden with pancakes, fresh fruit, bacon, scrambled eggs, and what looked like homemade cinnamon rolls. It was more food than the two of them could possibly eat, but Lily understood what Elena was really offering: comfort, care, the kind of nurturing that came through feeding people you cared about. "This looks amazing," Victor said, and Lily heard the gratitude in his voice, not just for the food, but for Elena's presence, her kindness, the way she was helping them find their way back to each other. They sat at the kitchen table, not the formal dining room with its echoing emptiness, but the cozy breakfast nook that overlooked the garden. Victor served Lily pancakes and cut them into small pieces without being asked, an automatic gesture that made Lily's throat tight. It was something her mother used to do, something she hadn't realized she'd been missing. "So," Victor said as they ate, "I've been thinking about your education. You've been working with tutors at home, but I'm wondering if you'd like to try going to school, being around other kids your age?" Lily's fork paused halfway to her mouth. School. She'd been homeschooled since her mother died, Mrs. Whitmore insisting it was more appropriate, more controlled, more befitting a child of Victor Hale's status. But the truth was, Lily had been isolated, cut off from peers who might have noticed something was wrong, who might have asked questions Mrs. Whitmore didn't want to answer. "I don't know," Lily said carefully. "What if the other kids think I'm weird?" "Weird how?" Lily gestured vaguely at her head, at the tangle that still marked her as different, damaged. Because of this. Because I'm broken. Hey, Victor's voice was sharp enough to make her look up. You are not broken. You went through something terrible and you survived it. That doesn't make you broken. That makes you strong. But the other kids might not see it that way. Maybe not, Victor acknowledged. Kids can be cruel sometimes, but they can also be kind and funny and exactly what you need. You shouldn't have to be alone all the time, Lily. You should have friends. You should have recess and art class and drama about who gets to be line leader. You should have a normal childhood. I don't think I remember what normal is, Lily admitted quietly. Victor's expression softened. Then we'll figure it out together. We don't have to decide about school right now, but I want you to know it's an option. Anything you want, friends, activities, hobbies, we'll make it happen. Elena appeared with fresh orange juice, setting it down gently. If I may suggest, she said carefully, perhaps after Lily's hair is better, we could visit a few schools. Just to look around, see what feels right. No pressure to decide immediately. Victor nodded. That's a good idea. What do you think, Lily? Lily considered. The thought of school was terrifying, but also appealing. She was tired of being alone, tired of talking to no one but tutors who came and went without ever really seeing her. The possibility of having friends, of being part of something normal, sent a flutter of hope through her chest. Maybe, she said, after my hair is fixed. Deal, Victor agreed. They finished breakfast in comfortable silence, and then Elena led Lily upstairs for the second treatment session. The process was painstaking and delicate. Elena worked with specialized detangling solution and infinite patience, carefully separating strands a few at a time, never pulling hard enough to cause pain. It was completely different from the few times Lily had tried to fix it herself, yanking at knots until her scalp bled and her eyes watered. You have beautiful hair, Elena murmured as she worked. Your mother must have taken such good care of it. She did, Lily whispered. She used to brush it every night and tell me stories about princesses and dragons and brave girls who saved the world. Your mother sounds like she was an amazing woman. She was. Lily's voice caught. I miss her so much. Elena's hands paused for a moment, gentle on Lily's shoulders. Of course you do, sweetheart. That kind of missing never really goes away, but it does get easier to carry. And your mother, I bet she's so proud of you, of how strong you've been. I don't feel strong. I feel like I messed everything up. Lily. Elena moved around to face her, crouching down so they were eye to eye. Listen to me very carefully. What happened to you was not your fault. You're a child. Children need adults to take care of them, to notice when something is wrong, to help them with things they can't handle alone. Mrs. Whitmore should have helped you. Your father should have been paying attention. The adults in your life failed you. But you? You survived. You kept going even when it hurt. That takes incredible strength. Lily wanted to believe her. She wanted to believe that she wasn't fundamentally flawed, that the past year hadn't been punishment for some inadequacy she couldn't name, but the belief was still fragile, tentative, like a plant pushing up through concrete. They worked for another hour, Elena's hand steady and sure, until Lily's scalp began to ache, and Elena decided they'd done enough for the day. The tangle was noticeably smaller, progress that filled Lily with cautious optimism. We're getting there, Elena said with satisfaction. Another few sessions and we'll have this completely cleared. Then we can give you a proper haircut, something beautiful and fresh. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Dr. Morrison arrived with a kind-faced woman she introduced as Dr. Sarah Chen, the child psychologist Victor had mentioned. Lily, Dr. Chen said, settling into a chair in the living room with an ease that suggested she was used to talking with nervous children. Your dad thought it might be helpful for us to chat a bit. Is that okay with you? Lily looked at her father, who nodded encouragingly. Dr. Chen is here to help, he said. She's someone you can talk to about anything, about Mom, about what happened, about how you're feeling. And anything you tell her is private, just between you two, unless you want to share it with me. I don't have to talk if I don't want to? Lily asked cautiously. Absolutely not, Dr. Chen confirmed. This is your space. You talk about what you want, when you want. I'm just here to listen and maybe help you make sense of some difficult feelings. Victor excused himself, giving Lily space, and for the next hour, Dr. Chen simply talked with her. She didn't push or pry. She asked gentle questions about Lily's interests, her memories of her mother, what a normal day was like. Gradually, carefully, Lily found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. "Sometimes I feel like I'm two different people," Lily admitted at one point. "There's the before Lily, when Mom was alive and everything was good. And then there's after Lily, and she's smaller and quieter and always scared of doing something wrong." "That makes a lot of sense," Dr. Chen said thoughtfully. "When we lose someone we love, especially when we're young, it can feel like the whole world shifts. The rules change. The person we were doesn't quite fit anymore. So we try to become someone else, someone we think will be safer or less trouble or hurt less." "Is that bad?" "It's not bad or good. It's survival. But here's the thing, Lily. You don't have to stay in survival mode forever. With help and time and safety, you can start to find pieces of before Lily again. Not the same exactly, because you can't unknow loss. But maybe a new version, someone who carries both the joy you remember and the strength you've developed." The concept was almost too big for Lily to grasp fully, but something about it resonated. The idea that she could change again, that she wasn't permanently broken, that there might be a future where she felt whole again. It was the first real hope she'd allowed herself in months. When the session ended, Dr. Chen spoke briefly with Victor in the hallway, while Lily pretended not to eavesdrop from her spot on the couch. "She's remarkably resilient," Dr. Chen was saying, her voice low but audible. "But Mr. Hale, the neglect she experienced, it's created some deep trust issues. She's learned to minimize her needs, to stay invisible, to expect that asking for help will be rejected. Undoing that pattern will take time and consistency." "Whatever it takes," Victor replied. "I'll do whatever she needs." The most important thing is presence. Not grand gestures, not expensive gifts, just consistent, reliable presence. Show up when you say you will. Notice when she's struggling. Create space for her to express needs without fear of rejection or punishment. That's how you rebuild trust. "I can do that. I believe you can. And Mr. Hale, you'll need support too." What happened here wasn't just about Lily. Your grief overwhelmed you to the point where you couldn't see what was happening to your daughter. That's not judgment. Grief is powerful and consuming, but you need to process it in healthy ways so it doesn't blind you again. "I've scheduled an appointment with my therapist for tomorrow," Victor said. "I stopped going after Rachel died because it was too painful, but I see now that was a mistake." "Good. That's good. Lily needs you to be healthy so you can help her heal." That evening, Victor ordered pizza, Lily's favorite, from the place her mother used to take her to on Friday nights. They ate in the den, curled up on the oversized sectional, watching an animated movie that made them both laugh. It was simple and ordinary and absolutely perfect. Halfway through the movie, Lily shifted closer to her father, resting her head against his arm. Victor wrapped his arm around her shoulders, holding her gently, and Lily felt safe in a way she hadn't in over a year. "Daddy?" she said during a quiet moment in the film. "Yeah, princess?" "Thank you for not leaving this time." Victor's arm tightened around her. "I'm not going anywhere. I promise you, Lily. I'm here for the long haul." The next few days fell into a new rhythm. Victor worked from home, his laptop set up in whatever room Lily occupied so he could be near her. He attended every treatment session with Elena, learning how to care for Lily's hair properly so he could take over once the immediate crisis was resolved. He joined her for meals, helped with her lessons, read to her before bed. He showed up, consistently and reliably, exactly as Dr. Chen had advised. And slowly, tentatively, Lily began to believe it might last. The CPS investigation, when it came, was less traumatic than Victor had feared. The caseworker, a tired-looking woman named Patricia Rodriguez, spent several hours at the house, documenting the changes Victor had made, interviewing Elena and the other staff, and speaking with Lily privately. "I can see that the situation here has improved dramatically," Ms. Rodriguez said to Victor at the end of her visit. "The previous caretaker has been flagged in our system, and we'll be monitoring her closely if she seeks future employment with children. As for your case, Mr. Hale, I'm satisfied that you've taken immediate and appropriate action to address the neglect. I'll be following up in 30 days, and we'll need continued documentation from Dr. Morrison about Lily's medical treatment. But I don't see any reason to remove her from your care. Victor felt weak with relief. Thank you. I know I failed her before, but I swear. Mr. Hale, Miss. Rodriguez interrupted, not unkindly. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen genuine abuse, malicious neglect, situations that would make your hair stand on end. What I saw here was a parent who was drowning in grief and trusted the wrong person. That doesn't excuse the neglect, but it does explain it. What matters now is that you recognized the problem and took action. Just stay present, okay? That little girl needs you. I will, Victor promised, every single day. By the end of the second week, Elena had successfully removed the massive tangle completely. It had taken hours of patient work across multiple sessions, but finally, Lily's hair was free. The scalp beneath was still healing, red and tender in places, but the infections were responding to treatment and the lice infestation had been completely eradicated. How does it feel? Elena asked, running her fingers gently through Lily's now loose hair. Light, Lily breathed, turning her head experimentally. It feels so light. Victor, watching from the doorway, felt tears sting his eyes. Something as simple as brushing hair, something his wife had done without thinking every single night, had become this enormous ordeal. And his daughter had suffered through it alone, in silence, because she'd learned that her pain didn't matter. I think, Elena said with a smile, it's time for that haircut we talked about. What do you say, Lily? Ready to try something new? Lily looked at her father, seeking permission or reassurance, or maybe just connection. Victor smiled and nodded. Let's do it, Lily said, and her voice held a note of excitement that Victor hadn't heard in over a year. They returned to the salon, Jessica's place, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Jessica greeted them with a warm hug for Lily and genuine happiness in her eyes. Look at you, she exclaimed. Your hair is free. Oh, honey, I'm so proud of you for getting through all that treatment. It couldn't have been easy. Elena helped, Lily said shyly. She was really patient. Well, now it's my turn to make you look absolutely beautiful. Come sit down and tell me what you're thinking. For the first time in her life, Lily got to choose her own hairstyle. Not what Mrs. Whitmore dictated, not what was easiest to manage, but what she actually wanted. She and Jessica looked through magazines together, discussing options, and finally Lily settled on a shoulder-length cut with soft layers that would be easy to maintain but still felt special. As Jessica worked, cutting away the damaged ends and shaping what remained into something healthy and new, Victor watched his daughter transform. With each snip of the scissors, she seemed to sit taller, smile brighter. When Jessica finally spun the chair around to show Lily her reflection, the girl's face lit up with pure joy. I look like me again, Lily whispered, touching her hair wonderingly. I look like before. You look like you, Jessica corrected gently. And you're absolutely beautiful. Victor paid the bill and added a tip that made Jessica's eyes widen. But it still didn't feel like enough for what she'd done. Not just today, but that first day when she'd cared enough to recognize that something was desperately wrong. As they walked to the car, Lily suddenly stopped and turned to her father. Daddy, can we go to Mom's grave? I want to show her. Victor's breath caught. They hadn't visited Rachel's grave since the funeral. He'd been unable to face it, unable to stand at that stone and accept that his wife was really gone. But looking at his daughter's hopeful face, he realized this wasn't about his pain. This was about Lily needing to share something important with her mother, to maintain that connection even across death. Of course, he said, his voice rough. Let's go. The cemetery was peaceful, rolling hills dotted with trees and stone markers. Rachel's grave was in a section near an old oak tree, exactly as she'd wanted. Victor had purchased it years ago when they were making their estate plans, never imagining he'd need to use it so soon. They walked together to the simple granite headstone, Rachel Harper Hale, beloved wife and mother. 1985-2024. She lived with joy and loved without measure. Lily knelt on the grass, tracing her fingers over the letters of her mother's name. Hi, Mommy, she said softly. I got my hair cut, see? It's short now, like we talked about wanting to try. Elena helped get all the tangles out. It hurt sometimes, but she was really gentle. And Daddy's been staying with me every day. We watch movies and eat pizza, and he reads to me at night, just like you used to. Victor knelt beside her, his hand on her shoulder, and for the first time since Rachel's death, he let himself really feel the loss. Not the numbing fog of denial, not the frantic escape into work, but genuine grief, raw and painful and somehow cleansing. "I'm sorry, Rach," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I let our baby down. I was so lost without you that I couldn't see she was lost too. But I'm trying now. I'm really trying. I hope you can forgive me." Lily leaned against him, and they stayed there for a long time, father and daughter, grieving together in a way they should have been doing all along. When they finally stood to leave, Lily placed a small stone on top of the headstone, a Jewish tradition Rachel's grandmother had taught her. "I'll come back," Lily promised. "I'll tell you everything that happens. All the good stuff and the hard stuff, too. And Daddy will come too, right, Daddy?" "Right," Victor confirmed. "We'll come together." As they drove home, Victor's phone buzzed with messages, the board demanding answers, his COO with urgent questions, investors wanting updates. A month ago, he would have pulled over immediately to respond, prioritizing the company over everything else. Instead, he silenced the phone and kept driving, one hand on the wheel and the other holding his daughter's hand. The company could wait, his daughter could not. That night, after dinner and a movie and the bedtime story that was becoming their routine, Victor kept the promise he'd made in the salon 2 weeks ago. He sat on the edge of Lily's bed with a soft bristled brush and carefully, tenderly, began to brush her newly cut hair. "Tell me a story," Lily requested, her eyes already drooping. "Like Mom used to." Victor thought for a moment, then began. "Once upon a time, there was a king who ruled a great kingdom. He was wealthy and powerful, and everyone thought he had everything, but the king had forgotten the most important thing in his kingdom, his daughter, the princess. One day, something terrible happened that made the king realize what he'd been missing. And even though he couldn't change the past, he could change the future. So the king put down his crown and his sword and his fancy robes, and he became what he should have been all along, a father." "Did they live happily ever after?" Lily murmured sleepily. "They worked on it," Victor said softly, still brushing. "Every single day they worked on it. Because happiness isn't something that just happens. It's something you build, one moment at a time, one choice at a time. And the king chose his daughter, every time, no matter what." "That's a good story," Lily whispered. "Yeah," Victor agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "Yeah, it is." He brushed until Lily fell asleep, then carefully tucked the covers around her and kissed her forehead. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door, looking back at his daughter's peaceful face. She looked different now. Not just because of the haircut, though that was part of it. There was color in her cheeks again, a softness to her expression that had been absent for months. The tense, frightened look that had become her default was slowly being replaced by something that looked almost like contentment. They had a long way to go. Dr. Chen had warned him that healing from neglect wasn't linear, that Lily would have setbacks and hard days, that the trust they were rebuilding was fragile and would need constant tending. But for the first time since Rachel's death, Victor felt equal to the challenge. He felt present, engaged, determined. He'd failed his daughter once. He would spend the rest of his life making sure he never failed her again. Downstairs, he found Elena cleaning up the kitchen, humming softly to herself. She looked up when he entered and smiled. "She's asleep?" Elena asked. "Out like a light. Elena, I wanted to talk to you about making your position permanent as household manager, but also, I don't know, maybe more like family manager? Someone who helps me make sure Lily's needs are being met, who'll speak up if I start slipping back into old patterns." Elena studied him carefully. "Mr. Hale, can I be honest with you? Please. What Lily needs most isn't another employee. She needs her father. I'm happy to help, to support you both, but I can't be a replacement for your presence. That's what went wrong before. You delegated her care to someone else and stopped paying attention. I'll work for you, but only if you promise that you're staying involved, that you're going to keep showing up." "I promise," Victor said immediately. "I'm not looking for someone to replace me. I'm looking for someone to help me be better, to remind me what matters when I get distracted, To be another set of eyes and ears who genuinely cares about Lily's well-being. Elena nodded slowly. Then, yes, I'd be honored. They discussed details, salary, responsibilities, boundaries. Elena would maintain the household, coordinate with staff, help with Lily's care, but the major decisions would always involve Victor. She would be support, not replacement. A partner in Lily's care, not its sole provider. As Victor finally headed to his own room, for the first time in weeks without his laptop, without plans to work until 3 in the morning, he felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. It took him a moment to identify it. Peace. Not happiness yet, not with the grief still fresh and the guilt still sharp, but peace. The sense that he was finally on the right path, that his daughter was safe and seen and loved, that they were healing, slowly but surely, together. In her room down the hall, Lily slept deeply, her freshly brushed hair splayed across her pillow, her face relaxed in genuine rest, and for the first time in over a year she dreamed not of abandonment and pain, but of her mother smiling, of her father's steady presence, of a future that might actually be okay. The nightmare wasn't over, the healing was just beginning. But they were facing it together now, and that made all the difference. 3 weeks into their new reality, Victor made a decision that terrified him almost as much as it excited Lily. They were going to visit schools. The morning started with Lily standing in front of her closet, frozen with indecision. She'd pulled out 3 different outfits and rejected them all, her anxiety mounting with each passing minute. Elena found her there, close to tears, surrounded by discarded clothes. "Hey, what's going on?" Elena asked gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I don't know what to wear," Lily said, her voice trembling. "What if I look stupid? What if the other kids think I'm weird? What if they ask why I haven't been in school and I don't know what to say?" Elena reached out and took Lily's hand. "First, you could never look stupid. Second, you're going to visit, not enroll today, so there's no pressure. And third, if anyone asks questions you don't want to answer, you can just say you were homeschooled for a while and wanted to try something new. You don't owe anyone your story, Lily, not until you're ready to share it." Lily nodded, wiping her eyes. Together, they selected a simple purple dress that Lily felt comfortable in, and Elena helped her style her hair, now healthy and shining, falling in soft waves around her face. Looking in the mirror, Lily barely recognized the confident-looking girl staring back at her. She didn't feel confident. But maybe, she thought, if she could look the part, the feeling would follow. Victor was waiting downstairs, dressed more casually than usual in slacks and a sweater instead of his typical suit. He smiled when he saw Lily, and she could see the pride in his eyes. "You look beautiful, princess," he said, offering his hand. "Ready for our adventure?" "I think so," Lily said, though her stomach was doing nervous flips. The first school was pristine and impressive. Soaring glass buildings, manicured lawns, students in crisp uniforms moving between classes with purpose. The headmaster, a severe-looking woman named Mrs. Patterson, gave them a tour that felt more like a corporate presentation than a glimpse into childhood. "We pride ourselves on academic excellence," Mrs. Patterson said, as they walked through hallways lined with trophy cases. "Our students consistently score in the top percentile nationally. We have a rigorous curriculum that prepares them for the finest prep schools and, eventually, Ivy League universities." Lily watched the students they passed, all perfectly groomed, moving in quiet, orderly lines, no one laughing or talking loudly. It reminded her uncomfortably of the mansion during Mrs. Whitmore's reign, beautiful and controlled and utterly devoid of warmth. "What about art?" Lily asked quietly. "Or music? Do you have those?" Mrs. Patterson's smile was tight. "We have extracurricular options, of course, but our focus is primarily academic. We find that students who come here are serious about their education and understand that play is secondary to preparation." Victor glanced at Lily and saw the way her shoulders had hunched, the light dimming in her eyes. He'd seen enough. "Thank you for your time, Mrs. Patterson," he said, cutting the tour short. "We'll be in touch." Outside, Lily let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "I didn't like it there," she admitted. "Everyone looked sad, like they weren't allowed to be kids." "I didn't like it either," Victor agreed. "That's not what I want for you. Let's try the next one. The second school was completely different. A progressive institution where students called teachers by their first names and classrooms looked more like creative studios than traditional learning spaces. The director, an enthusiastic man named Marcus Chen, greeted them with warmth and genuine interest. "Lily, it's wonderful to meet you," he said, crouching down to her level. "What are some things you love to do?" Lily, still cautious, considered the question. "I like reading, and I used to like drawing before." She trailed off, not wanting to explain the before. "Well, we have an incredible art program here. Come on, let me show you." They toured classrooms where students worked in small groups, engaged in animated discussions. They visited an art studio where kids were covered in paint and clearly having the time of their lives. They saw a music room where a group of third graders were composing their own song, instruments scattered around them in cheerful chaos. In the library, a cozy space with beanbag chairs and colorful murals, Lily noticed a girl about her age sitting alone in a corner, reading. The girl looked up as they passed, and something in her expression was familiar. Not quite sadness, but a kind of careful watchfulness that Lily recognized from her own mirror. "That's Sophie," Marcus said quietly, noticing Lily's interest. "She joined us a few months ago. Brilliant kid, but she's had some challenges adjusting. Sometimes it takes time to feel safe enough to open up." Lily nodded, understanding more than Marcus probably realized. As they walked through the playground, watching kids play tag and build elaborate sandcastles, Victor saw something shift in his daughter's expression. She wasn't smiling exactly, but there was a softness there, a hint of longing that told him this place felt different, felt possible. "What do you think?" he asked her when they'd finished the tour and Marcus had stepped away to give them privacy to talk. "I like it," Lily said slowly. "It doesn't feel scary like the first place. But Daddy, what if I can't make friends? What if I'm too different now?" Victor knelt down so they were eye to eye, right there in the middle of the playground. "Lily, listen to me. You are different. What you went through changed you. How could it not? But different doesn't mean broken or wrong. It means you understand things other kids your age might not. You know what real pain feels like, so you'll recognize it in others. You know what it's like to feel invisible, so you'll see the kids who are lonely. That's not a weakness, that's a superpower." "It doesn't feel like a superpower." "Not yet," Victor agreed. "But it will. I promise you, sweetheart, it will." They visited one more school that afternoon, a small private academy that fell somewhere between the rigid structure of the first and the creative freedom of the second. It was nice, but Lily's heart had already decided. She wanted the second school, wanted the art room and the music and the girl named Sophie, who looked like she understood what it meant to carry heavy things. That evening, over dinner, they made it official. Lily would start at Westridge Progressive Academy after the holiday break, giving her a few more weeks to prepare, to feel ready. Dr. Chen thought it was the good idea, a healthy step forward, as long as they moved at Lily's pace and didn't push too hard. "We'll take it one day at a time," Victor assured her. "If it's too much, if you're not ready, we can always wait longer. There's no rush." But Lily surprised him. "I want to try," she said, and her voice held a determination he hadn't heard before. "I'm scared, but I want to try." The weeks leading up to the start of school were filled with preparation. They bought school supplies together, Lily carefully selecting notebooks with different colored covers, pencils with fun erasers, a backpack she actually liked instead of one Mrs. Whitmore would have deemed appropriate. They visited the school again so Lily could familiarize herself with the layout, practice opening her locker, meet her teacher. Miss Rodriguez, the third grade teacher, was young and energetic, with kind eyes and a laugh that made everyone around her smile. She'd been briefed by Marcus and Dr. Chen about Lily's situation, enough to understand that this child needed patience and gentleness, without knowing details that weren't necessary for her to know. "I'm so excited to have you in my class," Ms. Rodriguez said when they met. "We're reading Charlotte's Web right now. Have you read it?" Lily nodded. "It's one of my favorites. My mom used to read it to me." "Well, maybe you could help lead our discussion when you start. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the friendship between Charlotte and Wilbur." It was such a simple thing, but it made Lily feel valued, seen, like she had something to contribute. She left that meeting feeling a little less terrified and a little more hopeful. The night before her first day, Lily couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if she said something stupid? What if no one talked to her? What if she had a panic attack in the middle of class? Dr. Chen had taught her breathing exercises for moments like this, but they weren't helping. Finally, she got up and padded down the hall to her father's room. The door was ajar and she could see him sitting up in bed, reading by lamplight. When he heard her soft knock, he looked up immediately. "Can't sleep?" he asked, setting his book aside. Lily shook her head, and Victor patted the space beside him. She climbed into his bed, curling up against his side the way she used to when she was much younger, when nightmares would send her running to her parents' room seeking comfort. "Talk to me," Victor said softly. "What's going on in that head of yours?" "What if I'm not ready?" Lily whispered. "What if I mess everything up?" "Then we'll figure it out together. Lily, there's no such thing as being perfectly ready. Sometimes you just have to jump and trust that you'll learn to fly on the way down. And you know what? I'll be right here to catch you if you fall. Promise?" "Promise. Always." They stayed like that for a while, Victor's arm around Lily, her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Eventually, the anxiety eased enough for Lily to feel drowsy, and Victor walked her back to her room, tucked her in, and sat beside her bed until she fell asleep. The first day of school arrived with bright January sunshine that felt like a good omen. Lily dressed carefully in jeans and a soft green sweater, her hair brushed until it shone. Elena made a special breakfast, heart-shaped pancakes and fresh strawberries, and even though Lily's stomach was too nervous to eat much, she appreciated the gesture. Victor drove her to school himself, though they arrived 20 minutes early because Lily wanted to get there before the crowds. They sat in the parking lot, watching other families arrive, and Victor could feel his daughter's anxiety radiating off her in waves. "You've got this," he said, squeezing her hand. "And remember, I'm picking you up right here at 3 o'clock. I won't be late, I promise. What if something happens and you can't come? Then Elena will come. And if Elena can't, then my driver will come. And I'll call the school to let you know. But Lily, nothing is going to happen. I'm going to be here. 3 o'clock, right here." Lily nodded, taking a deep breath. "Okay, I'm ready." They walked to the entrance together, Victor carrying her backpack until the last possible moment. Miss Rodriguez was there to greet them, her smile warm and reassuring. "Good morning, Lily. I'm so glad you're here. Come on in. I'll show you where to put your things." Victor crouched down, pulling Lily into a hug. "I love you, Princess. You're going to do great." "I love you too, Daddy." She walked into the classroom, glancing back only once to make sure he was still there. Victor waved, and then she was gone, disappearing into this new world where he couldn't protect her, couldn't control what happened, couldn't shield her from every potential hurt. It was terrifying. He stood there for a long moment, his chest tight with an emotion he couldn't quite name. Pride, yes, but also fear, and something that felt almost like grief. Not for what was lost, but for the little girl who was growing up, becoming independent, learning to face the world without him by her side every moment. "Mr. Hale?" Marcus Chen appeared beside him, understanding in his eyes. "She's going to be fine. I've seen a lot of kids come through here, and Lily has something special. Resilience, heart. She'll find her way." "I hope you're right," Victor said quietly. "I am. Trust me, and trust her. She's stronger than you think." Victor nodded, finally turning to leave. He'd scheduled meetings today, trying to maintain some semblance of work while being available if Lily needed him. But every hour that passed felt like a week. He checked his phone compulsively, half expecting the school to call, for something to go wrong. But the call never came. Inside the classroom, Lily was navigating her own journey. The morning started with introductions. Ms. Rodriguez had the class sit in a circle and share one interesting thing about themselves. When it was Lily's turn, her mind went blank, panic fluttering in her chest. I like to read," she managed finally. "And I just got a new haircut." It felt stupid, inadequate, but Ms. Rodriguez smiled warmly. "Reading is wonderful. What's your favorite book right now?" Maybe The Secret Garden. My mom used to read it to me." "That's a beautiful choice. We have a copy in our classroom library if you ever want to read it again." The moment passed, and Lily felt herself breathe a little easier. Nobody laughed at her. Nobody thought she was weird. She was just another kid in the circle. At recess, things got harder. The playground was chaos. Kids running, screaming, playing games with rules Lily didn't know. She stood near the building, watching, trying to make herself invisible the way she'd learned to do so well at home. "Hi." The voice came from beside her, and Lily turned to find the girl from the library, Sophie. Up close, she had dark curly hair and serious brown eyes that seemed to see more than they should. "Hi," Lily said back, uncertain. "You're new, right? I saw you visiting a few weeks ago." "Yeah. Today's my first day." Sophie nodded, understanding in her expression. "It's scary at first. Everyone already knows each other, and you feel like an alien who doesn't understand the language." "Exactly," Lily breathed, relieved that someone got it. "It gets easier," Sophie said. "Not right away, but eventually. Do you want to sit with me? I usually just read during recess, but you could hang out if you want." It wasn't an invitation to join a game or a group. It was something smaller, simpler, safer. An offer of companionship from someone who understood that sometimes friendship meant just being in the same space, not having to pretend to be okay. "Yeah," Lily said. "I'd like that." They sat together on a bench at the edge of the playground, Sophie reading her book while Lily watched the other kids play. It should have felt lonely, but somehow it didn't. Somehow, having one person who understood was enough. At lunch, Sophie introduced Lily to two other girls, Maya and Aisha, who welcomed her with casual friendliness. They talked about the latest animated movie, about a book series they all loved, about ordinary third-grade concerns that felt miraculous to Lily because they were so beautifully normal. "Do you want to come to my birthday party next month?" Maya asked. "It's going to be at the trampoline park." "Really?" Lily felt something warm bloom in her chest. "You want me to come?" "Yeah, obviously. I'm inviting the whole class, but I actually want you there. You seem cool." Cool. Lily had never been called cool in her life. She wasn't sure she believed it, but the invitation itself felt like acceptance, like maybe she could belong here. When 3 o'clock arrived, Lily practically ran to the parking lot, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Victor was there, exactly where he'd promised to be, leaning against his car with his eyes fixed on the school exit. "Daddy!" Lily launched herself at him, and Victor caught her, spinning her around. "How was it? Tell me everything." "It was good. I made friends. Well, kind of friends. There's this girl, Sophie, who's really nice, and at lunch I sat with her and Maya and Aisha, and Maya invited me to her birthday party, and Ms. Rodriguez said I could help with our reading discussion tomorrow, and nobody was mean, and I didn't cry or mess anything up." The words tumbled out in a rush, and Victor felt his throat tighten with emotion. This was what childhood was supposed to look like. Excitement about friends and parties, and the small triumphs of an ordinary day. "I'm so proud of you," he said, his voice thick. So incredibly proud. That night, over dinner, Lily recounted every detail of her day. Elena listened with warm attention, asking questions, celebrating small victories. And later, when Victor brushed Lily's hair before bed, a ritual they'd maintained every single night, she talked about Sophie. "I think she's been sad too," Lily said quietly. "She didn't say it, but I could tell. The way she watches everyone, like she's trying to figure out if it's safe. That's how I feel all the time." "Maybe that's why you found each other," Victor suggested. "Sometimes the people who understand us best are the ones who've been through similar things." "Do you think she'd want to come over sometime, to play?" Victor's heart swelled. A month ago, Lily wouldn't have imagined inviting anyone over. She wouldn't have believed anyone would want to spend time with her. "I think that's a wonderful idea. We can ask her parents." The playdate was arranged for the following Saturday. Victor had been nervous about it, worried that Lily would retreat back into her shell, that the other girl would somehow hurt his daughter's fragile confidence. But Sophie arrived with her mother, a kind woman who seemed to understand without explanation that both girls needed gentleness, and within minutes the two of them were in Lily's room, talking and laughing like they'd been friends for years. Sophie's mother, Jennifer, accepted Victor's offer of coffee, and they sat in the kitchen while Elena bustled around, preparing snacks for the girls. "Sophie told me a little bit about Lily," Jennifer said carefully. "Not details, just that she'd had a hard year. Sophie has too. Her father, my ex-husband, he was not a good man. We left about 6 months ago, and Sophie's been struggling to trust people again. Victor felt a shock of recognition. Lily lost her mother last year, and then the caretaker I hired, she wasn't kind. Lily suffered, and I didn't see it until it was almost too late. Jennifer reached across the table and squeezed his hand. But you see it now, that's what matters. A lot of parents never do. I almost lost her, Victor said quietly. Not to death, but to neglect. To my own grief being more important than her pain. I wake up every morning terrified I'll slip back into those patterns. Then you probably won't, Jennifer said. The parents who should worry are the ones who think they're doing everything right. You're questioning yourself, staying vigilant, actually showing up. That's what our girls need. Upstairs, Lily and Sophie were having a similar conversation, the kind only children can have, honest and direct in ways adults rarely manage. My dad used to hit my mom, Sophie said matter-of-factly as they colored together. And sometimes me, when I got in the way. That's why we left. Lily's hand stilled on her crayon. I'm sorry that happened to you. Thanks. What happened to you? You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Lily considered, then decided Sophie deserved the truth. My mom died. And my dad was so sad he couldn't see me anymore. There was this woman taking care of me, but she was mean. My hair got really tangled and infected, and nobody noticed for a long time. Until they did. And then everything changed. Is your dad better now? Yeah, he's really trying. He stays home now, and he brushes my hair every night, and he never misses picking me up from school. My mom does that too, Sophie said. She's always there now. It's weird, right? Having them actually pay attention? Really weird, Lily agreed. Sometimes I still think it's going to stop, that he'll forget about me again. My therapist says that's normal. When people hurt you, even if they didn't mean to, your brain learns not to trust them. It takes time to unlearn it. You have a therapist too? Yeah, do you? Lily nodded. Dr. Chen, she's nice. Mine's Dr. Patel. She's nice too. They went back to coloring, and the conversation shifted to lighter things. Favorite books, movies they wanted to see, plans for Maya's birthday party. But something had shifted between them. A foundation of understanding that most friendships took years to build. They'd found each other in their brokenness and discovered they were stronger together. When Jennifer came to pick up Sophie a few hours later, both girls begged for more time, already planning their next playdate. Victor watched them say goodbye, real friends, the kind Lily hadn't had in over a year, and felt gratitude so intense it was almost painful. As winter turned to spring, Lily continued to bloom. School became less terrifying and more exciting. She joined the art club and discovered she had a talent for painting, creating vivid watercolors that Ms. Rodriguez displayed prominently in the classroom. She tried out for the school play and got a small part, 3 lines and 1 song, but she was thrilled. She went to Maya's birthday party and came home exhausted and happy, smelling of pizza and cake. And through it all, Victor kept his promise. He was there for every school pickup, every art show, every small milestone. He reduced his work hours permanently, promoting Sarah to co-CEO and delegating responsibilities he'd once thought only he could handle. The company didn't collapse. In fact, it thrived under shared leadership, proving that Victor's presence hadn't been as irreplaceable as he'd believed. But his presence in Lily's life? That was irreplaceable. That was everything. One evening, in early April, about 4 months after that horrifying day in the salon, Victor was sitting in the den working on his laptop while Lily did homework at the coffee table. It was a comfortable silence, the kind that comes from genuine companionship rather than loneliness. "Daddy?" Lily said suddenly, looking up from her math worksheet. "Yeah, princess? I'm happy." The words were simple, but they hit Victor with the force of a revelation. He closed his laptop and moved to sit beside her on the floor. "Yeah? Yeah, I still miss Mom. That never goes away. And sometimes I still get scared that you'll disappear again. But mostly I'm just happy. Is that okay?" Victor pulled her into his arms, his eyes stinging. "That's more than okay, sweetheart. That's perfect. Your mom would be so glad to know you're happy. She'd want that for you more than anything. I think she'd be proud of you too," Lily said quietly, "for coming back, for staying." "I hope so," Victor whispered. I really hope so. That night, as Victor performed their nightly ritual of brushing Lily's hair, he thought about all the moments he'd almost missed, all the pain that could have been prevented if he'd just looked up from his grief long enough to see his daughter drowning beside him. But he also thought about second chances, about redemption, about how sometimes the worst moments of our lives can become turning points if we're brave enough to face them. "Tell me a story," Lily requested, as she often did. Victor thought for a moment, then began. Once upon a time, there was a king who lost his queen. He was so heartbroken that he forgot about everything else, including his daughter. For a long time, the princess suffered in silence, thinking she didn't matter enough to be heard. But one day, someone brave spoke up, and the king finally opened his eyes. He saw what he'd been too blind to see before, that his daughter needed him, that she was hurting, that he was failing the most important job he'd ever had. So he changed. He put down his crown and his work and his grief, and he became the father his daughter deserved. It wasn't easy. Some days he wanted to hide from the pain, but every day he chose to stay, to be present, to love her the way she needed to be loved. "Did they live happily ever after?" Lily asked. Victor smiled, still brushing her hair in long, gentle strokes. "They lived honestly ever after, which is better than happy, because honest means you face the hard stuff together. It means you don't pretend everything's fine when it's not. It means you show up even when it's difficult. And that kind of love, that kind of real, messy, honest love, that lasts forever." Lily was quiet for a moment, then turned to look at him. "I love you, Daddy. Thank you for coming back." "I love you too, Princess. More than anything in this world. And I'm not going anywhere. That's a promise I'll keep every single day for the rest of my life." He meant it. And for the first time since Rachel's death, Victor Hale felt like he might actually become the man he'd always wanted to be. Not because of his wealth or his success or his business acumen, but because he'd learned the hardest lesson of all, that showing up for the people you love, really showing up, is the only thing that truly matters in the end. The spring sunshine was streaming through the windows of Victor's home office when his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. He almost sent it to voicemail. He'd gotten good at protecting his time with Lily, at not letting work intrusions steal moments that belonged to his daughter. But something made him answer. "Mr. Hale? This is Patricia Rodriguez from Child Protective Services. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Victor's stomach dropped. It had been months since the investigation, months since Ms. Rodriguez had closed their case with a positive report. Why was she calling now? "Ms. Rodriguez," he said carefully, trying to keep the anxiety from his voice. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," she assured him quickly. "Actually, better than fine. I'm calling because I wanted to follow up on Lily's case, and also because I have a rather unusual request." "I'm listening." "I've been doing this work for 15 years, Mr. Haley, and I've seen every kind of outcome you can imagine. Some cases end tragically. Some end with children being removed from homes that can't keep them safe. But every once in a while, not often, but sometimes, I see a case that represents real transformation. Yours is one of those cases." Victor felt his throat tighten. "We're trying. Every day we're trying." "I know you are. I've been monitoring the situation as required, speaking with Lily's school, her therapist, her pediatrician. The consensus is unanimous. Lily is thriving. She's engaged in school, making friends, showing none of the signs of ongoing neglect or trauma that we typically see in cases like hers. Whatever you're doing, Mr. Hale, it's working." "I'm just being her father," Victor said quietly. "The way I should have been all along. And that's exactly why I'm calling. Mr. Hale, I work with a lot of parents who've made mistakes, some intentional, some not. Most of them are defensive, angry at the system for intervening, resistant to change. You weren't. From day one, you took responsibility. You made immediate, dramatic changes to prioritize your daughter, and you've sustained those changes for months now. That's rare." "Where are you going with this, Ms. Rodriguez?" "I'd like to ask if you'd be willing to speak at a conference I'm organizing for foster parents and families in crisis. We bring in experts, therapists, caseworkers, but what really makes a difference is hearing from parents who've been through it, parents who failed their children and found a way back. Your story could help a lot of people, Mr. Hale. A lot of children." Victor was silent for a long moment, processing the request. The idea of standing in front of strangers and talking about his failures, about how completely he'd let Lily down, made his skin crawl. But then he thought about all the children out there suffering in silence like Lily had suffered, all the parents too consumed by their own pain to see their children's. "Can I think about it?" he asked finally. "Of course. The conference isn't until June. I'll send you the details and you can let me know. But Mr. Hale, thank you for what you've done for Lily. Thank you for being brave enough to change." After she hung up, Victor sat staring at his phone, Miss Rodriguez's words echoing in his mind. He'd never thought of himself as brave. Brave was facing down fears. What he'd done was simply open his eyes to a reality that had been there all along, one he'd been too broken to see. That evening, he mentioned the call to Dr. Chen during his weekly therapy session. He'd been seeing her consistently since that day at the salon, working through his grief, his guilt, his fear of failing Lily again. It had been painful work, facing all the ways his pain had blinded him, but it had also been necessary. "What's your hesitation about speaking?" Dr. Chen asked, her pen poised over her notepad. "I don't know if I have anything worth saying. I failed my daughter. I let her suffer for over a year. What kind of message is that?" "It's a message about redemption," Dr. Chen said gently. "About the possibility of change. Victor, you've been carrying your guilt like a stone around your neck for months now. Maybe it's time to transform that guilt into something useful, into a way to help others avoid the mistakes you made. What if talking about it publicly hurts Lily? What if other kids find out and tease her? That's a valid concern. But you could ask her. Lily's old enough to have a voice in decisions that affect her story. You might be surprised by what she says." So that night, after dinner and homework and the bedtime routine they'd perfected over months of practice, Victor sat on the edge of Lily's bed and told her about Miss Rodriguez's call. "She wants me to talk to other parents," he explained, "about what happened to you, to us, about how I failed you and how we found our way back. But I won't do it if you don't want me to. This is your story too, Lily. You get to decide who knows it." Lily was quiet for a long time, her fingers playing with the edge of her blanket. Victor waited, giving her space to think, to feel, to process. "Will you tell them my name?" she asked finally. "Not if you don't want me to. I can keep it general, just talk about the experience without identifying details." "What about Mrs. Whitmore? Will you say her name?" "No, the point isn't to shame anyone. It's to help parents understand how easy it is to miss what's happening right in front of them. How grief or stress or just being too busy can blind you to your children's pain." Lily nodded slowly, considering. "I think you should do it," she said, surprising him. "Maybe if you tell our story, some other kid won't have to hurt the way I did. Maybe some other dad will wake up before it's too late." Victor felt tears prick his eyes. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Besides, I'm not ashamed anymore. What happened wasn't my fault. You and Dr. Chen and Elena keep telling me that, so if telling the truth about it can help someone else, then we should tell it." "When did you get so wise?" Victor asked, his voice rough with emotion. "I learned from my dad," Lily said with a small smile. "The new version. The one who stays." Victor pulled her into a hug, holding her tight, marveling at the resilience of this child who'd been through so much and somehow emerged with her capacity for compassion intact. She was stronger than he'd ever be, and he was humbled by her courage. Over the next few weeks, Victor prepared for the conference with the same intensity he used to bring to business presentations. But this was different. This wasn't about impressive slides or compelling data. This was about raw truth, about vulnerability, about standing in front of strangers and admitting the worst thing he'd ever done. He wrote and rewrote his speech a dozen times. Elena listened to practice runs and offered feedback. Even Lily weighed in, suggesting he talk more about his feelings and less about the timeline of events. "People don't need to know exactly what day everything happened," she said wisely. "They need to know how you felt. How scared you were when you realized what you'd done, how hard it was to change. That's what will help them." She was right, of course. So Victor stripped away the clinical details and focused on the emotional truth, the numbness of early grief, the way work had become an escape from pain, the moment in the salon when his entire world had shattered, the terror of almost losing his daughter, not to death, but to his own blindness, and the slow, difficult work of rebuilding trust. The conference was held at a hotel in downtown Los Angeles on a warm Saturday in June. Victor had arranged for Sophie to spend the day with Lily. They were going to the aquarium with Jennifer, making a whole adventure of it. As he drove to the hotel, his hands were sweating on the steering wheel. The ballroom was packed with foster parents, social workers, therapists, and families in various states of crisis. Victor sat through the morning sessions, listening to experts talk about trauma-informed parenting, attachment disorders, and the neurobiology of neglect. It was all important information, but it felt abstract, clinical. Then it was his turn. Miss Rodriguez introduced him with warmth, explaining that he was a parent who'd been through the system and come out the other side. She didn't give details, didn't expose his story before he was ready. Then she stepped aside and Victor walked to the podium, looking out at hundreds of expectant faces. For a moment, he couldn't speak. His carefully prepared words disappeared from his mind. But then he thought of Lily, who'd given him permission to share their story, who believed it might help someone else. And he found his voice. "My name is Victor Hale," he began, "and I almost lost my daughter. Not to illness or accident, but to my own grief and neglect. I want to tell you how it happened, not because I'm proud of it, but because I think a lot of you in this room might see yourselves in my story. And if you do, maybe you'll make different choices than I did. Maybe you'll open your eyes before it's too late." He told them everything. About Rachel's death, about the crushing weight of grief that made everything else seem unimportant, about hiring Mrs. Whitmore and trusting her completely because it was easier than facing his own inadequacy, about working 18-hour days because being numb felt safer than being present, about Lily slowly disappearing in plain sight, her hair becoming matted and infected, her spirit dimming, her pain growing, while he was too blind to see any of it. "I told myself I was doing my best," Victor said, his voice cracking slightly. "I told myself I was providing for her, giving her a good home, good education, everything she needed. But I wasn't giving her what she actually needed, which was me, my attention, my presence, my love. Not as an abstract concept, but as a daily, hourly, moment-by-moment reality." He described the day in the salon, the horror of discovery, the realization of how completely he'd failed. He didn't spare himself any of the painful details, and as he spoke, he saw recognition in faces throughout the audience. Parents nodding, eyes filling with tears, hands reaching for partners or squeezing armrests as they confronted their own failures reflected in his story. The caseworker who investigated us, Ms. Rodriguez, who's here today, she could have removed Lily from my home. Legally, she would have been justified. The neglect was severe and sustained, but she gave me a chance to change, to prove I could be the father my daughter needed. And I want you to understand that change wasn't easy. It wasn't just about being physically present. It was about fundamentally restructuring my priorities, my identity, everything I thought made me who I was. Victor paused, taking a breath, steadying himself for the hardest part. I had to accept that I'd become the villain in my daughter's story. Not because I meant to be, not because I didn't love her, but because my own pain was louder than hers. And here's what I learned. Intention doesn't matter to a suffering child. My daughter didn't care that I was grieving. She was grieving too, and she needed me to show up anyway. She needed me to be stronger than my pain. And for over a year, I wasn't. He talked about the work of rebuilding trust, the consistency, the presence, the small daily choices that gradually, slowly created safety. He talked about the setbacks, the moments when Lily would flinch or retreat, or test whether he would really stay. He talked about the therapy, the brutal honesty, the nights he cried alone in his room after Lily was asleep because the weight of what he'd done felt unbearable. "But here's what I want you to know," Victor said, his voice strengthening. "Change is possible. Redemption is possible. If you're sitting in this room feeling like you've already failed too much, like you've already done too much damage, I'm telling you that's not true. Children are resilient in ways we can't imagine. They want to forgive us. They want to trust us. But we have to earn it. We have to show up consistently and honestly and prove through our actions that we've changed." He concluded with a recent conversation he'd had with Lily, one that still made his heart ache with gratitude. A few weeks ago, my daughter told me she was happy. Not healed, not perfect, not without scars, but happy. And she thanked me for coming back. Not for never leaving, because I did leave emotionally, even though I was physically present. She thanked me for coming back, for choosing her, for staying even when it was hard. That's all our children really want from us. To be chosen, to be seen, to matter more than our work or our pain or our excuses. Victor stepped away from the podium to complete silence. For a terrifying moment, he thought he'd misjudged everything, that his story had been too raw, too honest, too much. But then someone started clapping. Then another person. Then the entire room erupted in applause, people rising to their feet, tears streaming down faces, and Victor felt something release in his chest, some final piece of shame that had been holding him hostage. Afterward, dozens of people approached him. Foster parents struggling with traumatized children who wouldn't attach. Single mothers overwhelmed by the demands of parenting alone. Fathers who recognized their own grief-blind negligence in his story. Social workers who thanked him for his honesty, saying it would help them approach families with more compassion. One man, probably in his 50s, gripped Victor's hand with tears in his eyes. "My wife died 2 years ago," he said. "I've got 3 kids at home, and I've been doing exactly what you described, working myself to death, avoiding them because being around them hurts too much because they remind me of her. But listening to you, I realized I'm about to lose them too. Not to death, but to my own absence. Thank you for waking me up before I couldn't get them back." "It's not too late," Victor told him firmly. "I promise you, it's not too late. Go home. Talk to your kids. Tell them you're sorry, and you're going to do better, and then do better. Every single day, just do better." The man nodded, composed himself, and hurried out of the ballroom like a man with sudden, urgent purpose. Victor watched him go and felt that same sense of transformation Ms. Rodriguez had mentioned. The guilt he'd been carrying wasn't gone, but it was transmuting into something useful, something that might actually help other families avoid the pain his had endured. When he finally left the conference, exhausted but strangely peaceful, he drove straight to Jennifer's house to pick up Lily. She came running out when she saw his car, her face flushed with excitement from the aquarium trip. "Daddy, we saw jellyfish and sea otters, and there was this huge shark that swam right over our heads in the tunnel. It was so cool." Victor scooped her up, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, strawberry, her current favorite, and feeling overwhelming gratitude for the second chance he'd been given. "Sounds amazing. Tell me everything." On the drive home, Lily chattered about the fish and the exhibits, and how Sophie had been scared of the shark, but Lily had held her hand and told her it was safe. Victor listened with his full attention, asking questions, laughing at the funny parts, marveling at how normal this all felt, how beautifully, wonderfully normal. "How was your talk?" Lily asked eventually, her voice going quieter, more serious. "It was good," Victor said honestly. "Hard, but good. A lot of people told me it helped them, that hearing our story made them realize they needed to change things with their own kids. So maybe someone won't have to get hurt like I did? Maybe. I hope so." Lily was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the passing scenery. "Daddy, I'm glad you told them. I'm glad something good came from what happened." "Me too, Princess. Me too." That evening, as summer twilight painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, they had dinner on the back patio, something they'd started doing as the weather warmed. Elena had made Lily's favorite meal, and they ate slowly, savoring the food and the conversation and the simple joy of being together. "I've been thinking," Victor said, setting down his fork. "How would you feel about going on a trip this summer, just the 2 of us? Maybe up the coast, or to the mountains, or wherever you want to go." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Just us?" "Just us. A week or 2 of adventure. We could visit national parks, stay in cabins, go hiking, see new things. What do you think?" "I think yes." Lily practically bounced in her seat. "Can we go somewhere with stars, like really dark where you can see millions of them?" "Absolutely. I'll find the darkest, most star-filled place in California. Maybe Big Sur, or up near Yosemite. And can we bring s'mores stuff? And tell stories around a campfire?" "We can do whatever you want. This trip is all about us spending time together. No work, no schedules, no interruptions. just father-daughter time. Lily's smile was radiant, and Victor felt his heart expand with love for this resilient, forgiving child who'd given him a second chance he absolutely hadn't deserved. The next few weeks were consumed with planning their trip. Lily made lists of things she wanted to do, places she wanted to see, snacks she wanted to bring. Victor booked a cabin in the mountains near Sequoia National Park, deliberately choosing a location with no cell service, no Wi-Fi, nothing that could pull his attention away from his daughter. They left on a bright Monday morning in early July, the car packed with camping gear, hiking boots, and Lily's carefully curated collection of books and games. Elena waved them off with snacks for the road and strict instructions to take pictures. The drive took 6 hours, winding through increasingly dramatic landscape, foothills giving way to mountains, civilization giving way to wilderness. Lily kept her face pressed to the window, pointing out interesting rock formations, deer grazing in meadows, hawks circling overhead. "It's so different from the city," she breathed. "Everything's so big." "Wait until you see the sequoias," Victor said. "Those trees have been growing for thousands of years. They make everything else seem small." The cabin was perfect, rustic but comfortable, with a stone fireplace, wide windows overlooking the forest, and a porch with rocking chairs that practically demanded storytelling. They spent their first afternoon exploring the immediate area, finding a creek where Lily could wade and search for interesting rocks, marking trails they wanted to hike later. That night, as promised, they built a fire and made s'mores. Victor had forgotten how to do it properly. His s'mores-making skills were rusty from disuse, and Lily laughed at his attempts to manage the sticky marshmallows. "You're terrible at this, Daddy. I know. Your mom was always the camping expert. I was in charge of other things." "Like what?" "Like carrying the heavy stuff and setting up tents and pretending not to be scared when we heard noises at night." Lily giggled. "Were you really scared?" "Terrified. Your mom thought it was hilarious. She'd make spooky sounds just to watch me jump." They were quiet for a moment, the fire crackling between them, and Lily's expression grew thoughtful. "Do you think about her a lot?" "Every day," Victor said honestly, "but it doesn't hurt the way it used to. Now it's more like a warm ache, if that makes sense. I miss her, but I can also remember the good times without feeling like I'm drowning." "I'm glad," Lily said softly, "because I like when you tell me stories about her. It makes me feel like she's still part of us." "She is. She always will be. And Lily, your mom would be so proud of you, of how strong you've been, how brave, how you've opened your heart again, even after it was hurt." "You think so?" "I know so." They sat under the stars, thousands of them, just as Lily had requested, more than she'd ever seen in her life. Victor pointed out constellations, making up stories about them when he couldn't remember the actual mythology. Lily leaned against his shoulder, warm and content, and Victor thought about how far they'd come from that horrifying day in the salon. The week unfolded with lazy perfection. They hiked through groves of ancient sequoias, Lily's neck craning back to see the tops of trees that had been saplings before Christopher Columbus was born. They found a swimming hole where the water was shockingly cold but refreshingly clear. They played card games on the porch during an afternoon rainstorm. They cooked meals together, sometimes successfully, sometimes resulting in burned offerings that had them laughing and ordering pizza from the one place within delivery range. One afternoon, while exploring a meadow filled with wildflowers, Lily suddenly turned to Victor with a serious expression. "Daddy, can I ask you something? Anything? Do you ever worry you'll forget again? That you'll go back to how you were before?" The question hit Victor like a physical blow, but he understood why she was asking. Trust, once broken, didn't heal in straight lines. It healed in spirals, circling back to the same fears again and again until they were finally resolved. He knelt down so they were eye to eye. "I worry about it every single day," he admitted. "I'm terrified of slipping back into old patterns, of letting work consume me again, of missing what's important because I'm distracted by what seems urgent. That fear is probably going to be with me forever." "That's not very reassuring," Lily said, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. "But here's the thing, that fear is actually good. It keeps me vigilant. It makes me check in with myself constantly. Am I being present? Am I really listening? Am I showing up the way Lily needs me to? And when I notice myself slipping, and I do slip sometimes, everyone does, That fear reminds me to course correct immediately. But what if you slip and I don't notice? What if I don't say anything because I don't want to bother you? Victor took her hands in his. Then I need you to promise me something. Promise me you'll always tell me when something is wrong. When you're hurting, when you need me, when I'm not being the dad you need. Promise me you won't suffer in silence again. But what if you get mad? I won't get mad. I might feel sad that I let you down. I might feel guilty. But I will never, ever be mad at you for telling me the truth. Your feelings matter, Lily. Your needs matter. And I would rather hear hard truths from you than have you hide your pain to protect me. Lily studied his face for a long moment, searching for sincerity, for cracks in the promise. Finally, she nodded. Okay, I promise to tell you. Thank you. And I promise to listen, always. They continued their walk through the meadow, and Victor felt something settle in his chest, a deeper level of trust being rebuilt, brick by careful brick. This was the work, he realized. Not the grand gestures or the dramatic changes, but these small moments of honesty, of vulnerability, of choosing connection over comfort. On their last night before heading home, Victor built their biggest fire yet. They roasted hot dogs and made s'mores. Victor had finally gotten the hang of it, and watched the stars emerge as darkness fell. This was the best week ever, Lily said, her face sticky with marshmallow and chocolate. Can we do it again next summer? Absolutely. We can make it a tradition. Every summer, just us. No technology, no interruptions. Promise? Promise. Lily was quiet for a moment, then said something that made Victor's throat tight. I used to think I lost both my parents when Mom died. But I didn't, did I? I just had to wait for you to come back. Victor pulled her close, his eyes burning with tears he didn't try to hide. I'm so sorry you had to wait. I'm so sorry I left you alone when you needed me most. But you're right. I came back. And I'm never leaving again. I know, Lily said, and the certainty in her voice was the greatest gift Victor had ever received. I believe you now. They drove home the next day, both tired but happy, the car full of rocks Lily had collected and memories they'd created together. As they pulled into their driveway, Elena was waiting on the front steps, and the sight of her warm smile made Victor realize how much their household had become a real family. Not perfect, not without pain, but genuine and loving and whole. That night, Victor resumed their bedtime routine with gratitude for its beautiful normalcy. He brushed Lily's hair, grown longer now, healthy and shining, and told her a story about a king and a princess who went on an adventure together and remembered what really mattered. They found their way back to each other, he concluded softly, and they lived honestly ever after, which meant they kept showing up for each other every single day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard, because that's what love actually is. Not a feeling, but a choice you make over and over and over again. That's a good story, Lily murmured, already half asleep. Yeah, Victor agreed, kissing her forehead. Yeah, it really is. As the months rolled into a year, then approaching 18 months since that day in the salon, Victor found himself standing in Lily's bedroom doorway watching her sleep, marveling at the transformation that had occurred. Not just in her, but in both of them, in their entire life together. The girl curled under the covers bore little resemblance to the hollow-eyed child who'd sat frozen in that salon chair. Lily's face was relaxed in sleep, her hair, now past her shoulders again, thick and healthy, spread across her pillow. Her room had changed too, gradually evolving from the sterile white museum it had been into something that actually reflected a child's personality. Posters from her favorite movies covered one wall. Her artwork from school cluttered the bulletin board. Books were piled on her nightstand, some finished, some half-read, all well-loved. Tomorrow was a big day. Lily was performing in the school play, a production of The Secret Garden, where she'd landed the role of Mary Lennox, the lonely girl who discovers a hidden garden and learns to open her heart again. The irony of the casting wasn't lost on Victor, life imitating art, or perhaps art helping Lily process her own journey of healing and growth. He'd watched her rehearse her lines for weeks, seen her confidence bloom as she inhabited this character who wasn't so different from herself. Sophie was playing Dickon, the boy who helps Mary discover her strength, and watching them perform together was like witnessing the power of genuine friendship to transform lives. Victor quietly closed Lily's door and made his way downstairs, where Elena was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, going over the household schedule for the next week. "Can't sleep?" she asked, looking up with concern. "Just thinking," Victor admitted, pouring himself a glass of water and joining her at the table. "Tomorrow's the play, and I was remembering last year at this time, how different everything was." Elena's expression softened. "You've both come so far. I'm proud of you, Mr. Hale. I know that probably sounds presumptuous, but I am. You made hard choices and stuck with them. That takes real courage." "I still have days where I struggle," Victor confessed. "Days where the company needs something, and my first instinct is to drop everything and rush in. Days where grief hits me out of nowhere and I want to retreat into work. But now I catch myself. I pause. I ask whether what seems urgent is actually important or if I'm just falling into old patterns." "That awareness is everything," Elena said. "You'll never be perfect. None of us are. But you're present. You're trying. You're showing Lily every day that she matters more than anything else. That's what she needs." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and then Elena spoke again, her voice careful. "Mr. Hale, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. My sister in Arizona, she's been dealing with a similar situation to what Lily went through. Her husband died suddenly, and she's been so lost in grief that her son is starting to show signs of neglect. Not as severe as Lily's case, but the warning signs are there. Would you be willing to talk to her, to share what you learned?" Victor didn't hesitate. "Of course. Give her my number. Tell her she can call any time." "Thank you. I think hearing from someone who's been through it and come out the other side, it might make a difference." After Elena went to bed, Victor sat alone in the quiet kitchen, his mind drifting back through the past 18 months. He thought about all the moments that had led them here. The panic attacks Lily had experienced in those early months whenever Victor was late picking her up, convinced he'd abandoned her again. The breakthrough in therapy when Lily had finally allowed herself to express anger at him instead of just sadness. The first time Lily had invited friends over without prompting. The parent-teacher conference where Ms. Rodriguez had praised Lily's academic progress and her compassionate nature. The day Lily had asked if they could volunteer together at an animal shelter because she wanted to help creatures that had been abandoned or hurt. Each moment had been a small victory, a brick in the foundation they were rebuilding together. And now, watching his daughter prepare to perform on stage in front of hundreds of people, Victor felt overwhelming gratitude for the second chance he'd been given. The next evening, the school auditorium was packed with parents, siblings, and community members. Victor arrived early, securing a seat in the third row with perfect sightlines to the stage. Jennifer and Sophie sat beside him, and he'd saved seats for Dr. Chen and even Ms. Patricia Rodriguez from CPS, both of whom had become unlikely friends over the months of Lily's recovery. "I'm so excited to see this," Sophie said, bouncing in her seat. "Lily's been practicing her lines with me for weeks. She's really good." "She's nervous," Victor admitted, "but she wanted to do it anyway. That's what matters, feeling the fear and doing it anyway." The lights dimmed, and the play began. From the moment Lily stepped onto the stage, transformed by costume and makeup into the contrary, Lonely Mary, Victor was transfixed. His daughter, who 18 months ago could barely speak above a whisper, was projecting her voice across an entire auditorium. She moved with confidence, inhabited the character fully, showed emotional range that took his breath away. When Mary discovered the secret garden, when Lily's face transformed from suspicion to wonder, Victor felt tears streaming down his cheeks. He watched his daughter portray a journey of healing and opening up, of learning to trust and love again, and he saw their own story reflected back at him through art. The audience was completely engaged, laughing at the funny parts, silent during the emotional moments. And when the final scene came, Mary and Dickon and Colin in the restored garden, transformed by friendship and care and the courage to let others in, the applause was thunderous. Victor was on his feet instantly, clapping so hard his hands hurt, his face wet with tears he didn't try to hide. Lily took her bow with the rest of the cast, her eyes scanning the audience until they found him. When she saw him standing, applauding, openly crying with pride, her whole face lit up with a smile so brilliant it could have powered the stage lights. After the performance, families crowded the lobby to congratulate the young actors. Lily emerged still in costume, immediately swept up in hugs from her classmates and friends. When she finally made her way to Victor, he scooped her up, even though she was getting too big for this, even though they were in public, and held her tight. "You were incredible," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Lily, you were absolutely incredible. I'm so proud of you I could burst." "You're crying," Lily said, touching his damp cheek with wonder. "Happy tears. The best kind. Princess, you were born to be on that stage. You were confident and powerful and so talented." Miss Rodriguez appeared beside them, her own eyes suspiciously bright. "She really was remarkable. Victor, you should both be proud of how far you've come." Other parents approached with congratulations. Teachers praised Lily's performance, and through it all, Victor kept his hand on his daughter's shoulder, anchoring her, present in a way he'd learned was more valuable than any business deal or board meeting. As they were leaving, Marcus Chen, the school director, caught up with them. "Mr. Hale, could I have a moment?" Victor nodded, and Marcus pulled him aside while Lily chatted with Sophie and Jennifer. "I wanted to thank you," Marcus said quietly. "When you first brought Lily here, I could see she was struggling, wounded. She's not the only child in our school dealing with trauma. We have several, including Sophie. But watching you over these months, the way you've shown up consistently, the way you've prioritized her healing, it's been a model for other parents. Several families have mentioned being inspired by your involvement to be more present with their own kids." "I'm just doing what I should have been doing all along," Victor said. "Maybe. But you're doing it now. You made a choice to change, and you followed through. That matters more than you know. I've seen parents promise to be better and then fall back into old habits within weeks. You haven't. That consistency is what's allowed Lily to feel safe enough to take risks like performing on stage." The words settled into Victor's chest like a benediction. He'd been so focused on his own guilt, his own fear of failing again, that he hadn't fully recognized what he'd actually accomplished. Not perfection. He'd never achieved that. But sustained, consistent presence, day after day, month after month, showing up and staying present and choosing his daughter over everything else. That night, after they'd celebrated with ice cream and recounted every moment of the performance, after Lily had carefully hung her costume in her closet and placed her program on her bulletin board, Victor sat on the edge of her bed for their nightly ritual. As he brushed her hair, this act that had once been impossible, that had marked the lowest point of their journey, Lily spoke quietly into the comfortable silence. "Daddy, I was thinking about something." "What's that?" "You know how in the play, Mary finds the garden and it's all dead and locked up, and she has to work really hard to bring it back to life?" "I do." "I think that's kind of like what happened with us. After Mom died, it was like our garden got locked up. Everything was dead and sad and nobody could get in. But then you found the key again. And we worked together to make things grow again." Victor's hand stilled in her hair, his throat too tight to speak for a moment. When he finally found his voice, it was rough with emotion. "That's exactly what it was like. And Lily, you did just as much work as I did. Maybe more. You were brave enough to let me back in even after I'd hurt you. That took incredible courage." "I was scared," Lily admitted. "For a long time I thought maybe you'd leave again. Maybe this was just temporary, and you'd get tired of trying." "But you don't think that anymore?" Lily shook her head. "No, you've been here every single day. You brush my hair every night. You never miss my school stuff. You listen when I talk about things, even boring things. You're not going anywhere." "No, I'm not. I promise you, Lily. I'm here for good." Lily turned to face him, and in her eyes Victor saw a depth of understanding that shouldn't exist in a 9-year-old, but did because of everything she'd been through. "I forgive you, Daddy, for before, for not seeing me. I forgive you." The words hit Victor like a wave, washing over him, and he realized he'd been waiting to hear them for 18 months without knowing it. He'd been carrying the guilt like penance, like something he deserved to suffer under indefinitely. But his daughter, this extraordinary, compassionate child, was offering him the gift of forgiveness. "Thank you," he whispered, pulling her into his arms. "Thank you, sweetheart. I don't deserve it, but thank you." "You do deserve it," Lily said firmly, "because you changed. You became the dad I needed. That's what matters now." They held each other for a long moment, and Victor felt something release that he'd been clutching for so long, the last remnant of self-condemnation, the belief that he was fundamentally broken and unworthy. He was still flawed, still made mistakes, still had to work constantly at being present, but he was also forgiven. And more importantly, he'd forgiven himself enough to believe he could be the father Lily needed. The following weeks brought new developments. Elena's sister called, and Victor spent 2 hours on the phone with her, sharing his story without judgment, offering the hard-won wisdom he'd gained through his own failures. 2 weeks later, Elena tearfully reported that her sister had quit her second job, enrolled her son in therapy, and started making changes similar to those Victor had made. One conversation had planted a seed that might save another family. Miss Rodriguez called again too, asking if Victor would be willing to speak at more conferences, maybe even write about his experience for a parenting magazine. He agreed, understanding now that his story, painful as it was, had value beyond his own family. If his mistakes could help other parents avoid similar failures, then perhaps some good could come from the worst period of his life. Victor also made another significant decision. He officially stepped back from his role as CEO, making Sarah's promotion permanent rather than temporary. He would remain chairman of the board, involved in major strategic decisions, but the day-to-day operations would be Sarah's responsibility. The company thrived under her leadership, and Victor discovered something surprising. He didn't miss the constant crisis management. He didn't miss the 18-hour days and the all-consuming stress. His identity had been so wrapped up in being a successful businessman that he'd forgotten there were other ways to define success. Now, his greatest achievement wasn't building a billion-dollar company. It was raising a healthy, happy daughter. It was showing up consistently. It was being present for the small moments that actually mattered. Bedtime stories and school plays and conversations about friendship drama and helping with science projects and just being there reliably, lovingly, constantly there. One Saturday afternoon in late spring, almost 2 years after that day in the salon, Lily came running into Victor's office with Sophie close behind. Both girls were breathless with excitement, their hair windblown from playing in the backyard. "Daddy, Sophie and I had an idea." Victor closed his laptop, giving them his full attention. "I'm listening." "You know how you talked to that other dad whose kids needed help, and how you spoke at those conferences?" "Yes." "Well, we were thinking, what if we started something, like a group or a club or something, for kids who've been through hard stuff, where they could talk to each other and know they're not alone?" Victor looked at his daughter, this 9-year-old with enormous empathy and a desire to help others heal the way she'd healed, and felt pride swell in his chest. "That's a really beautiful idea," he said carefully. "What would it look like?" "We're not totally sure yet," Sophie admitted. "But like maybe kids could meet and do art or talk or just hang out, and they'd know everyone there gets it, you know? Everyone's been through something hard." "And maybe their parents could meet too," Lily added. "Like, support each other the way you and Jennifer do, because sometimes parents need help too, right?" Victor was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he smiled. "I think it's brilliant. Why don't you two work on a plan, what you'd want it to look like, who you'd want to involve, and then we can talk to Ms. Rodriguez and Dr. Chen and see if they have ideas about how to make it real." The girls squealed and ran off to start planning, their voices fading as they raced back outside. Victor sat at his desk, staring at the space they'd occupied, feeling something shift in his understanding of their journey. This wasn't just about recovery anymore. This was about transformation, about taking pain and turning it into purpose, about using their story to create something that might help countless other families. Over the next few months, the idea took shape. With guidance from professionals and enthusiasm from the community, they established the Garden Project, named after the play, after the metaphor that had become central to their healing journey. It started small, meeting twice a month in a community center, bringing together children who'd experienced trauma and their families. There were art sessions and group discussions, play therapy and parent support groups. Victor and Jennifer co-facilitated the parent meetings, sharing their stories, creating space for other parents to be honest about their struggles without judgment. The first meeting, Victor was nervous in a way he hadn't been since that initial conference speech. But watching Lily and Sophie welcome other children, seeing parents who looked as lost as he'd once been find community and hope, It was profound. One mother approached him afterward, tears streaming down her face. "My husband left 6 months ago," she said, "and I've been so depressed I can barely function. My daughter, she's been suffering, and I've been telling myself she's fine. But listening to you tonight, I realize she's not fine, and I need to do better. Thank you for giving me the courage to face it." "You don't have to do it alone," Victor told her. "That's what we're all here for, to help each other be better than we were yesterday." As summer approached, Victor and Lily started planning their second annual father-daughter camping trip. This time, Sophie was invited too, and Jennifer would join for part of it. Their family was expanding, not through blood, but through choice, through shared experience and genuine care. The night before they were scheduled to leave, Lily asked Victor to come to her room. He found her sitting on her bed, holding a framed photo of Rachel, one that used to sit on the mantel, but that Lily had claimed for her own room months ago. "I was thinking about Mom today," Lily said as Victor sat beside her, "about how she'd feel about everything that's happened." "What do you think she'd feel?" Lily was quiet, studying the photo, Rachel laughing, captured in a moment of pure joy. "I think she'd be sad about what happened, about how bad things got, but I think she'd also be proud of us, for not giving up, for finding our way back to each other." "I think you're right," Victor said softly. "Your mom loved you more than anything in the world, and even though she can't be here to see it, I think she'd be amazed by the person you're becoming. You're so much like her, you know. Her compassion, her strength, her ability to forgive and love even when it's hard." "Do you think she forgives you for what happened after she died?" The question took Victor's breath away. He'd wondered the same thing countless times, usually in the dark hours of early morning when guilt and regret were loudest. But now, sitting here with his daughter, he found he had an answer. "I think she does, because I've spent the last 2 years doing everything I can to honor her memory by being the father she would have wanted me to be. Not perfect, but present. Not flawless, but trying. I think she sees that, and I think she's glad we found our way back to each other." Lily set the photo carefully on her nightstand and turned to hug Victor. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Princess. So much." That night, brushing Lily's hair had a different quality to it. Not ritualistic obligation or penance, but pure connection. A way of saying without words, "I see you, I'm here, you matter." "Tell me a story," Lily requested, as she so often did. Victor thought for a moment, then began. "Once upon a time, there was a king who lost his way. He was so consumed by grief and pain that he forgot the most important thing in his kingdom, his daughter, the princess. For a long time, the kingdom was dark and cold and silent. The princess suffered alone, thinking no one could see her tears. But one day, something happened that broke the spell. The king finally opened his eyes and saw what his grief had done. And even though he couldn't undo the past, he could change the future. So he put aside his crown and his distance and his fear, and he learned to be a father again. It wasn't easy. There were days he wanted to retreat back into darkness. But every single day, he chose his daughter. He chose presence over perfection, honesty over hiding, love over fear." "And the princess?" Lily prompted. "The princess discovered that she was stronger than she ever knew. She learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting pain, but learning to carry it with grace. She learned that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself as much as others. And she learned that love, real love, isn't something you feel once and hold forever. It's something you build moment by moment, day by day, through showing up and staying present and choosing each other again and again." "Did they live happily ever after?" Victor smiled, still brushing, the motion soothing for both of them. "They lived honestly ever after. Some days were hard, some days grief or fear or old wounds would resurface and they'd have to work through them together, but they were never alone again. They had each other. They had their garden, their family, their community, their love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger for it. And every night, the king would brush the princess's hair and tell her stories, and she would know without doubt that she was seen, she was loved, she was chosen. And really, isn't that the only happily ever after that matters?" "Yeah," Lily murmured, her eyes already closing. "That's the best kind." Victor brushed until Lily fell asleep, then sat for a long moment just watching her breathe, marveling at the journey they'd traveled together. From that horrifying moment in the salon when his world had shattered to this peaceful evening 2 years later, it felt like a lifetime compressed into months and months stretched into eternity. He thought about the parent he'd been, absent, blind, consumed by grief to the point of neglect. And he thought about the parent he'd become, present, aware, committed to showing up no matter what. The transformation hadn't been instantaneous or easy. It had been daily, hourly work, choosing again and again to be better, to see clearly, to love actively rather than passively. Downstairs, he found Elena in the kitchen preparing for their trip, packing snacks and checking supplies. She looked up when he entered, and something in his expression made her smile. "She's asleep?" "Out like a light. Elena, I wanted to thank you for everything you've done for us, for seeing what was happening when everyone else looked away, for being patient with both of us, for becoming family." Elena's eyes grew bright. "You don't have to thank me. Being part of this, watching you both heal and grow, it's been an honor. You've reminded me why I do this work, why I believe families can change if they're willing to put in the effort. You saved my daughter's life," Victor said simply, "and probably mine, too. We'll never be able to repay that." "You already have," Elena assured him, "by becoming the father Lily needed, by using your story to help other families, by proving that redemption is possible. That's payment enough." That night, Victor lay in bed unable to sleep, his mind too full of gratitude and wonder and the profound awareness of how close he'd come to losing everything that mattered. He thought about the alternate timeline, the one where he'd never taken Lily for that haircut, where the neglect had continued unchecked, where CPS had removed her from his home, where he'd lost her completely. The thought made him physically ill. But that wasn't what happened. They'd been given a second chance, painful and hard-won, but real. And they'd seized it with both hands, both of them choosing each other, choosing healing, choosing to build something new from the rubble of what had been broken. His phone buzzed with a text from the father he'd talked to at the conference, the one who'd been drowning in grief. The message included a photo of him and his 3 kids at the beach, all of them smiling, clearly present with each other. "You saved our family," the text read. "Thank you for having the courage to share your story. We're going to make it." Victor stared at the photo for a long time, feeling the weight and wonder of how pain shared could become pain transformed, how his greatest failure had somehow, impossibly, become a source of hope for others. Not because he'd done everything right, he absolutely hadn't, but because he'd been honest about doing everything wrong, and then demonstrated that change was possible. He typed back, "You're saving your family by showing up for them. Keep choosing them. Every single day, keep choosing them. It's the only thing that really matters." The next morning dawned bright and clear, perfect for their camping trip. They loaded the car, Victor, Lily, Sophie, and Jennifer, laughing and joking, the easy camaraderie of people who'd become family through choice rather than obligation. As they pulled out of the driveway, Lily turned back to look at the mansion that had once felt like a beautiful prison, but now felt like home. "You okay?" Victor asked, catching her expression in the rearview mirror. "Yeah," Lily said, smiling. "I'm really good. I was just thinking about how different everything is now. How different I am." "How are you different?" Lily considered the question seriously. "I used to think I had to be invisible to be safe, that if I was too much trouble, everyone would leave. But now I know that's not true. Now I know I'm allowed to take up space. I'm allowed to need things. I'm allowed to be seen." "You're more than allowed," Victor said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're supposed to be seen. You're supposed to matter. You're supposed to know every single day that you are loved beyond measure." "I know that now," Lily said simply. "That's the difference." They drove toward the mountains, toward ancient trees and starlit skies, and a week of pure presence with each other. And as the city disappeared behind them and wilderness opened up ahead, Victor felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. Not because everything was perfect, it wasn't and never would be, but because he was exactly where he needed to be, with exactly who he needed to be with, doing exactly what mattered most. Being a father, being present, being enough. The garden they'd planted together, built from the soil of grief and watered with tears and tended with consistent, devoted care, was blooming. Not perfectly, but beautifully. Not without scars, but stronger for them. And that was all he'd ever needed to achieve. Not perfection, but presence. Not a flawless life, but an honest one. Not to erase the past, but to build a future worth having. As they reached the mountains and started the winding road to their cabin, Lily and Sophie burst into song in the back seat, something they'd learned in music class, off-key but enthusiastic. Jennifer joined in, and after a moment, so did Victor, all of them laughing at how terrible they sounded and not caring at all. This was life. This was love. This was what healing looked like. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of joy despite it. Not forgetting what happened, but refusing to let it define what came next. Not being perfect, but being present. Not living in fear of failing again, but having the courage to keep trying anyway. And as the sun climbed higher in the sky and the mountains rose around them and his daughter's laughter filled the car, Victor Hale knew with absolute certainty that he'd finally gotten it right. Not the business, not the wealth, not the achievements that had once seemed so important, but this moment, this choice, this daily decision to show up and stay present and love actively and completely. This was success. This was redemption. This was everything that mattered. And it was finally beautifully, perfectly enough.